Oh, wow.
I wonder if we have a notary here.
I think Jasper was in
Oh, he's a notary, okay.
Can everybody take their seats, please?
Hey, James, can you ask them to sign in if they haven't?
Yep, please sign in if you haven't. My name is James Bialotta. I'm the Vice Chair. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Vacation. Who would like to do the vacation today?
Let's skip
Would
it.
you be inclined?
I'm not really good at that.
I'd say we skip it.
I'll do it.
Okay.
It's on the agenda. Lord Father, thank you for this day. Pray that everyone gets here safe and leaves just as safe. May cool heads prevail and good discussions amount. Thank you. Amen. Roll call. Mr. Mullally?
Moss? Yerke?
Here.
Mueller? Jovic?
Here.
Getty? Williams?
Here.
Mack?
Here.
Bialotta?
Here.
Durlo? We have a quorum. 4 absent.
All right. Which moves us to the agenda. Now, normally the chair will cut off the agenda, but because we're without a chair, the agenda got very stretched. So, we did have some issues with West Dakota West River Electric, and we do have to be out here at a timely manner and packed up, ready to leave. So we are gonna just arbitrarily cut it off. Let's take a look here. Does anybody have anything that absolutely burns them if it's not being discussed? Is there anybody specifically here for an agenda item? Thomas, do you have any agenda items that absolutely have to get done today?
I would like to discuss 16.
16?
Yep.
Okay. Dan, do you have anything that absolutely has to be discussed today?
Yes, I like item 18. And
18?
Also, let's see, what was the other one? I guess the one on the conflict of interest, I think we could put that off for the meeting.
I'm sorry?
Number 17, we don't necessarily have to deal with that tonight, in my opinion.
Yeah, we do. If state law came out on that, we have to do that.
Okay, then we'll do it.
Just ones you have to have. Anything you...
Nope, that's it.
Mr. Williams?
Nope, I'm ready to go.
Mr. Jovic?
Well, we've got School of Mines folks here.
Okay. What number are we looking at for that?
15.
15. Is coming right up. 20 is finance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
numbers 13 and 14 would be dependent on what Dan has to report on Rapid City. If there's been any additional discussions or anything.
Did they get back to you yet, Dan?
No, and I think they're going to, when we had our meeting with them, what we had talked about was possibly having the first vote on this item and then the city is gonna get back to us, because we need 2 votes on those, and we could, if we need to change it, we could change it on the second vote. So if the board wants to, kind of based on the schedule that we had talked about originally with our 2 consultants, and trying to start that project in March, it might be wise for us to have the first vote on that tonight.
Sure. Are the consultants here? I didn't see Emily.
Emily said she was going to be here, but I don't see her.
Okay. Well. And Dr. Murray? I don't see her. Okay, we're gonna strike 13 and 14.
So this will be next month?
Yeah, we'll put that onto the next agenda.
James,
Yes.
Dr. Murray did say she would be here.
And so did Emily. I think they probably aren't here when we started, because we're kind of in the middle of the agenda, so I don't know if I'd strike that yet.
Well, what I know is we have a very limited amount of time, and if we don't have a good plan now, we'll be past midnight with the alarm going off several times.
I don't think those 2 items are gonna take very long. I think it's just a matter of us voting on the funds for it.
There will be discussion.
thanks, Dan.
Well, as it stands right now, we're gonna strike those 2 items unless something else changes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If striking those 2,
Striking those 2.
I'm not. No.
Okay, roll call.
Just for discussion, we didn't ask for discussion on that. The reason I'm saying that is these folks are planning on being here. And if we were gonna strike it, we should have notified them ahead of this meeting that we were not gonna consider this item. I just think it's not right to invite people to the meetings and then they're not here they're gonna be here to answer any questions, and then we're striking these items. I just don't think it's right.
Do we not strike them, but if they're not here, we would table
Skip it?
Yeah. Therefore, if they show up, then we got it. If not, let's just move on.
I'd agree.
That'll be a
Yeah.
speedier motion, because we could argue about striking them or not, but if we just put it, if the people that aren't here, we'll skip over, and there will be a motion to table it to the next meeting or something of that amount.
You know, I am kind of torn over the same issue they're having. Anyone not here agreed to table it immediately?
Yeah, if they're
Yeah.
not here for
Yeah.
that item, I would
I can go with
we
that.
move it to the next
All right,
meeting.
so keep the agenda as listed. Anyone not here, we'll table it.
Yep.
All right, time to swear in newly elected directors. Could we have our newly elected directors come forward to the podium, please? Mr. Jasper, will you be doing the honors today?
I certainly am prepared.
All right, great, thank you. How would you like to do it, one at a time or all at once?
All at once is fastest.
That's what he's paid for. Is it a copy of the we're gonna have him sign?
I think they usually do it one at a time, but
Well, we'll do it together, that sure moves it faster.
yeah.
Got that time crunch.
Yeah.
Did they say what
Date IDs.
Okay, yep,
Past
Okay.
11.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll ask that each of you raise your right hand, and I will read this for you in short sentences, and you repeat after me, okay? And I'll just leave a blank until you put in your name and put in the area that you'll be representing, okay? I, and then state your name,
I, Steve Rollinger,
Linda Harris.
of director areas, and then the area you'll represent.
9.
3.
5,
Having been elected as a member of the Board of Directors of West Dakota Water Development District,
having been
I've been
elected
elected as a member of the Board of Directors of the West Dakota Water Development District.
do solemnly swear that I will support the laws and Constitution of the United States
Do solemnly swear that I will support the laws and Constitution of the United States and the state of South Dakota.
and the state of South Dakota, yes.
State of South Dakota.
I will faithfully and impartially and to the best of my ability
I will faithfully and impartially and to the best of my ability
perform all the duties my said office
perform all the duties of my said office
of the Board of Directors of West Dakota Water Development District
of the Board of Directors of the West Dakota Water Development District,
and then district area and then state what area.
Director Area 1.
Director Area 9.
3, Director Area 5,
And render a true account of all money, credits, accounts, and property
and render true account of all money, credits, accounts, and property
of any kind that shall come into my hands as such officer,
Of
any kind that shall come into my hands as such officer,
and pay over and deliver the same according to law.
and pay over and deliver the same according to law.
Okay, and those of you who have the oath ready already, if you'll sign it. Oh, here they are. Here's one for Mr. Koff. And we have two for Mr. Koff.
Who's better than one?
Well, I'm not sure we need two, but
The rest of us.
maybe somebody's just making sure, because I have two for Mr. Driscoll also.
One for each, one for me, one for
One,
one that we keep and return.
and then you'll have one you can keep as well. There's Mr. Rollinger and Ms. Harris. Okay? Okay. Oops. Should put it right side up, right?
Look better, right?
And there's yours, Mr. Koff. Oops. Second time this year I made this mistake. Put 2018 instead of 2019. Did I do yours wrong? Yep. Well, I'm correcting it by initialing it, so. manager. Okay. Yes. Then you're officially in. Started putting my notary seal date. Here's your copy. Here's all the originals.
This is a complete packet. If you could want it. What's the back look like? Well, see, I think that's the other thing.
I should have it right there. It's the same as the ones that I've got it.
Yeah, I saw one.
Yep.
I'll put those out for the public today.
All right.
All right, welcome new board members. Which leads us to agenda item number 6. This is a new agenda item for conflict of interest disclosure. We'll go around the board. Any items on the agenda that you have a conflict of interest with, please disclose them. There is a new state law which will lead us to our other agenda item shortly, which is item number 17, that everybody that collects state money is required to have a conflict of interest statement or disclosure for their board or group. So, Mr. Mullally, will you do a roll call?
Coth,
No conflict of interest.
Bierke,
No conflict of interest.
Driscoll,
I'll have a conflict with the item on the USGS stream gauging, and just to make everybody aware up front, I've been employed by the US Geological Survey for about 30 years, retired in May, but I went back to work for USGS part-time as what's called a rehired annuitant. So that's the nature of my conflict. And kind of a secondary note is that USGS requires that we obtain a waiver to serve in positions such as this, and I'll provide the manager with a copy of that waiver for your records. Thank you.
Jovic,
No conflict.
Rollinger,
No conflict.
Williams,
No conflict.
Mack,
No conflict.
Bialotta,
No conflict.
Harris.
No conflict.
All right. Election of officers. We're going to turn this over to Dan to do a paper ballot.
Well, what I would suggest is you take nominations or I do.
You.
There's only one nomination.
Okay. So, we'll take nominations for chairperson. They must be the area director, and it's a 1-year term. Are there any nominations for chairperson?
You can go first, Ron.
I'd like to nominate James Bialotta as chair.
Thomas?
I would like to nominate Dan Bierke as chair.
All right, nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Bob Williams.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Tom Mack.
Nominations for secretary. Dan?
I'd nominate Linda Harris.
Any further nominations for secretary? Seeing none. Nominations for treasurer. I'd like to nominate Mr. Williams.
I've got a question there.
Yes.
Can we nominate our admin person for that position?
We can, however, we need 2 people to sign checks and other things. And typically the treasurer is one of those and Dan is already one. So if we can have a board member do it, it is
Yeah,
better.
I think it would be better if I were not treasurer
Good.
and also be admin at the same time.
Yep.
Might
Even with a
Look
dual
bad.
signature. Good.
Any other nominations?
Mr. Driscoll.
I'll nominate Steve Rollinger.
All right. I'll turn it over to Mr. Mullally for some paper ballots.
Got to have ballots printed out. So we'll start with the chair. We'll just pass these down. And what I would suggest is we just finish these up one at a time. So count for the chair and then go to the next one unless somebody has another way they want to do it. I'd also like to have perhaps somebody from the audience count
Miss-
with me to make sure.
Mr. Jasper, are you available? Yep. All right. Pass these up.
These here, and I'll take them one at a time. Okay, Bjorky carries with 6 votes for chair. So we'll do vice chair. Yeah. So, chair. Okay, Mac carries 6-3 for vice chair. Treasurer, yep.
Did we have more than one? No, treasurer, yeah.
Secretary first, or are they doing treasurer? They're doing treasurer.
I got out of order. Okay.
Well, we just,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
There's an extra one for secretary here. We'll send it back.
I guess I'm responsible for getting them out of order. I'm picking minutes. I'll take the blame.
I think for secretary, we could just have the voice vote.
There's just one.
Yeah. but Last year, they still voted, so I
Oh,
maybe we should do the same thing. Rollinger carries 5-4 for treasurer. So for secretary, need a motion. Could I entertain a motion to have a voice vote for unanimous approval for the secretary?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
chair is Murphy, vice chair is Mack, treasurer is Rollinger, secretary is Harris.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
All right, thanks.
Chris, we might as well proceed then with the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, item number 8 on the agenda is approval of minutes, the minutes from the previous meeting, the minutes. And take a look at those. Entertain a motion on that one.
I'll make the motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The treasurer's report. Mr. Williams, are you going to give it?
Mr. Rollinger doesn't get to take over right away.
I don't think he's prepared. If you'd be so kind, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
This is fun. All right. Ready now? Well, we're leaving you in good standing. You notice on the top right-hand corner, we are starting off the year with $232,655.01. We had our levy request was $229,236.06. It appears that we must have gotten in some additional funding from the county. One of the things to remember is the county pays us as people pay them. And this year, looks like we had some from maybe previous years to raise that number. Those two numbers should actually come out about the same, and they are. We have $482,645.09 available. Director expenses will be for last year. This, by the way, is for December 28th. So there may be new funds and so forth that have come in, or we may have paid bills that will change some of the numbers on this. And the director expenses for last year was $6,850.65. Anything to add to that, Dan?
No.
Okay. Total administrative expenses, $16,270.65. Total legal and consulting fees, $61,894.38. Admin budget spent so far to date of 28 December was $85,015.68. This includes H2E admins for the first part of the year, and then the rest was for Dan. So that actually makes up the bulk of that number. Total, we have several water projects which we've been paying in on that come to a total of $86,359.80. Total expenditures this year to date, $71,375.48. The project budgets and the well, I'm sorry, that total expense is the total for all of the various parts and pieces. We have outstanding on the right-hand column there. We have $10,234.32 in expenditures that, or monies that we can spend if we spend, or actually that's a savings, sorry. You'll notice the spent to year to date was the admin spent year to date. And so we had budgeted for $95,250. Looks like we came out with additional monies going in. Budget, we budgeted $139,907.99, and we spent year to date that $86,359.80. So we actually have, at the end of last year, $53,548.19 that'll be carried over into the next year.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions on the treasurer's report from the board? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Nathan.
Doesn't matter.
Second by Nathan. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 10, designate new meeting space. Director Williams.
Well, we had a little issue last time. Number one, I didn't know we had a time limit on this space, but come to find out, at about 10 o'clock, the alarms go on, and I think they're all motion sensors. So when we adjourned so that we could go into executive session last time, the people that were out there set off those motion detectors. And we, so Western Electric sent us a letter, which I think is part of your packet, stating that we needed to find other places to be. We asked if we could get a 1-month extension. This letter is dated December 27th, 2018. We had no meetings scheduled. Everybody's gone. Great time for finding out that you have to find a new location, but they did grant us the ability to come in and have this meeting tonight. Dan, do you have any other comments?
I checked with, we have the authorization to use the garage space for our meetings, so in anticipation of this, after I got this letter, I booked it for next month. There's some other possibilities we could look at. School of Mines, perhaps, game fish and parks. I think we've been generous with both of those organizations with money, so maybe they would let us use that space if the garage didn't work out. However, I think the garage might work out okay. The downside, there are two really issues. One is we might have to grab another table to seat all the directors. The other issue is there is no overhead like this, so we'd have to probably get a projector and some kind of screen or a sheet or something and hang it up. Other than that, I just have to book it, make sure there are no conflicts. Or I put the note in the bylaws up there, just so we know, the way I read them, we have to have a majority of the board vote for a change of meeting place or time. And so this will be the last chance to do that vote.
Okay. Do you have more
So
comments?
I guess I would suggest, if we're in doubt, you could vote to change it to the garage for now.
Okay.
And
I've got a
I have,
question.
oh, sure, go ahead and ask.
Okay. Nathan, you have a comment on this?
Well, I've got a question about the letter. It says there has been controversy lately with your board and the use of the room. Does anybody know what that means?
Would you come to the, Mike, Mike's got a hand up. Come up to the podium and identify yourself and former chairman.
Mike Mueller, past chair. Excuse me. Today I'm a citizen. I called for Dick Johnson from West River Electric, CEO, because I've known him a few years. Was unable to attain his attention, so I talked to Dave Semerad today, operations manager for this facility in this region. And I asked him if the controversy was related to information printed in the Rapid City Journal. He said yes. They'd been getting phone calls, information from customers asking questions if we're affiliated, and so I apologize if they get a black eye over that. So, and I asked him for an extension if they would, and he said your extension is tonight's meeting. That's what the extension exists. So.
Okay, thanks for contacting me. So I guess I'd recommend that we follow the procedure and designate the garage for our February meeting then. Mr. Driscoll?
I'd be comfortable with that. We probably need to designate something tonight, but I'd suggest perhaps we'd check into the availability of the Game Fish and Parks outdoor campus. Would be, you know, a group this size would be very uncomfortable down at the garage, and you know that facility tends to be available oftentimes, you know, pending, you know, what's been reserved. But
I have
Okay.
a comment in regard to that.
Could you,
As far as I know.
could you come up to the podium and identify yourself, please? Thank you.
My name is Barry Mux. I'm a member of Dakota Rural Action. As far as I know, they are currently holding their monthly meetings at that location on Tuesday nights, the second Tuesday of the month, the same night you guys hold your meeting. So there might be a conflict there. You can check it out, but it is a nice place. But
Okay.
there are other rooms there too, so maybe you can double up or something. So anyway,
Well, it's gonna have to be, we need something about this size because
Correct.
we do get a crowd once in a while.
right.
Would you follow up on that then? Are we good for that night then or not?
Pardon me?
Are we good for February, was it February 12th?
That second Tuesday, I don't have my calendar.
It says here on the tentative meeting schedule, Tuesday, February 12th, regular meeting.
We're booked for that. I haven't booked any subsequent meetings.
Okay,
Would you like me to take an action and check with GFP?
yes, if you would,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I think having as many new people as we actually have more people in the audience too. If they have additional things, get in contact with your director and have him make sure that Dan hears what those possibilities are. And that'll be
Yeah.
a benefit to us.
good suggestion. Any other? James?
School of Mines comes to mind.
Okay,
They have a lot of lecture halls, and especially, you know, after 5 o'clock when most classes are done for the day.
I wonder even down at the city of Rapid City, they've got, since the school's moved out, they've got a lot more room down there. That might be a possibility
They
too.
have uses for that space, I thought.
Well, the community room is open, I mean, that's what it's called, the community room for nonprofits and perhaps us is a possibility. That might be one to check into too with the city.
Where was that?
City of Rapid City,
The admin building?
admin building. See if that would be a possibility.
I think they
Like I
probably
say, the
use
school
training into
district's
that.
moved out of there now, so there's a lot more room.
That's why they kicked the
There.
school out.
One other thing?
Yes,
Do you have a contact there, somebody to suggest a contact?
maybe the mayor. Mayor's office, I'd say. Yes, Mr.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move that the garage at 402 St. Joe Street, Rapid City, South Dakota, be the location of a future monthly meeting. And then that will give us a little breathing room so that we can, put out as many feelers as we can for space.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second from Tom. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, item 11, designation of meeting schedule. Is that what we just addressed?
No,
No,
that was
no.
meeting space, is
Location.
meeting schedule.
Okay. So that's what, I see, that's what you've got here in the packet, tentative 2019 meeting schedule?
Yep.
Has everybody had a chance to look at that? If not, entertain a motion to approve this tentative 2019 meeting schedule as listed.
It is.
It's in the packet.
It's just, yeah, it's very.
Yeah, I tried to
be
get
quicker
my
for you to
as I
look
could.
at.
Let me pull up August.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if, it's just a question. If the 12th is going to be the garage, which we just approved, the March one would be the one that we have to remember to tell people we would like that space for March 12th. And we don't have to have it on Tuesdays. We could have it on Mondays like this. We can actually shift.
Yeah, we've done that quite a bit,
Okay.
actually, in the last year.
All we need to do is, well, yeah, and this just doubles the amount of work for admin. But March 12th would be the time frame for anybody going out and looking for a new space.
Okay.
That's what you'd want to tell them, I think.
Good point. This does say it's a tentative schedule. Any other comments? Did we have a motion on this?
You made a motion, there was no second.
I'll second
Is there a December on here? Is it cut off?
Yeah, it's on the second page, top of the second
Sorry,
page.
I printed short science now.
Oh, there it is.
There's two sheets.
Okay.
Still haven't figured that out.
So, Did you get that, Dan?
Pardon me?
Did you get the motion in the second?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 12. I guess this is an annual thing for us, designating official newspapers. And we've been using Rapid City Journal, Hill City Prevailer, and the Wall Current, which we did switch last year from, I believe it was New Underwood.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How many papers do we need to designate?
Do you know, Dan?
It's not defined, they just, I think there's a state law that says you have to publish in appropriate papers, so I think that's up to us.
Good.
Just a note, at one of the previous meetings several months ago, we voted to not publish every meeting, just the annual schedule of meetings and the budget meeting, because it's not required that we publish every meeting, a notice of every meeting.
So are we publishing two times a year then?
Yes.
Okay,
And for any vacancies.
and for any vacancies, okay?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I've got concerns about including the Rapid City Journal. We've already shown, just by virtue of our previous discussion, that this board has been harmed by the biased reporting by the Rapid City Journal. And I would motion that we remove them from consideration for one of our official newspapers. I don't think they're deserving of that. I don't think we should be giving them any of our money.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Williams. Any discussion on the motion?
Should be some discussion. Is there another paper or outlet that we can, is it an email type situation we can use that allows for broad distribution of the meeting minutes or the annual text or publication of vacancies? How would that be handled in a situation where we publish in Hill City and Wall?
And it is posted on the website.
Well,
Okay.
the term official, what exactly does that mean? Is
Just the ones that we designate.
Yeah, but I mean, emails, I don't know if that. is
No, an email wouldn't be
that- Wouldn't be
official.
official.
But if it's published on 2 county newspapers on each end of the county, and then in addition to the website, it would decrease cost.
But speaking for my district, which is in the city limits, I bet no one gets the Wall Current or the Hill City Purveyor. So that's basically excluding my area.
No, I understand. I'm in city limits as well. I don't know of anybody in my entire neighborhood that gets the Rapid City Journal.
Dan,
So
Dan, do you have
that
some?
might help if I read the codified law
Okay,
Jay gave me. 46A-3D-11, designation of legal newspapers. Each year, each Water Development District Board shall designate legal newspapers of general circulation published within the Water Development District as official newspapers of the Water Development District.
okay. It's newspapers,
Yeah.
yes. Any other discussion on the motion? The motion is to not include the Rapid City Journal as a designated official newspaper and using Hill City Prevailer and Wall Current. If I
Yeah, I've
understood.
got something to add to that. I would rather see us put money, even if it's toward the Native Sun Times. If we need to have another newspaper within the city of Rapid City, I'd rather do something other than the Rapid City Journal. Rapid City Journal in the circles that I run in has a very poor reputation. Very few people desire to talk to them because of the biased reporting that they've experienced. So I'd rather see us do something different than the Rapid City Journal.
Right now, the motion is to do not include the Rapid City Journal.
That's right, but I think there's at least one other paper in town. I heard concern about not having access to people that live in the city, so.
Okay, Tom, do you have a comment?
I want to call the question.
Okay, the question's been called. Any, I guess if you call the question, you have to vote, right? Okay. Okay, the motion is to designate official newspapers, not including on the list the Rapid City Journal. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the motion indicate by saying no.
No.
How many ayes were there? Was it 2 or 3?
Do a
One.
roll call.
Okay, want a roll call? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, on agenda item 12, motion Koth,
No.
Bierke,
No.
Driscoll,
No.
Jovic,
Yes.
Rollinger,
Nope.
Williams,
Yes.
Mack,
Nope.
Bialotta,
Yes.
Harris.
No.
A motion fails, 3 nays, 6 ayes, 6 nays.
Okay, thank you. I'd entertain a motion then to designate those 3.
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second.
moved by Dan, and seconded by Linda, to include those three as listed on the agenda. Any comments on that? If not, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, or if say no.
Nay.
No.
No. Is there 3 no's, or do you want a roll call?
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Koth,
Yes.
Yerke,
Yes.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Jovic,
No.
Rollinger,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
Mack,
Yes.
Bialotta,
No.
Harris.
Yes.
The motion carries 6-3.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, items 13 and 14.
Yes.
Select to see our consultants who are here.
I don't see
I don't
Dr.
see it.
I don't see him.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move to table items 13, 14 to the February 12th meeting for discussion when the two representatives for items 13 and 14 are here to discuss.
okay, the second to the motion by Steve. Any discussion on that motion?
No, I second it.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table, I guess we just
13
had
and 14.
13 and 14.
Who made the motion?
Tom did,
Mac,
seconded by Steve.
Bialotta.
Oh, seconded by Violet, okay. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Yes, Ron?
Can we request that the proponents of those projects give us some updates before we're asked to vote on their budget? Or is that part of what they were gonna do tonight?
Well, they were here to answer questions because we've had this item in front of us, but for the new board members, I think it would be a good idea.
I've read the background and I do have a few questions I'd like to ask
Sure.
the proponents.
We'll ask them to be at the next meeting and answer any questions that the board might have. Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I'd like to encourage each of you to read on the website these two proposals, which are fairly lengthy. So I'd encourage you to look at it before the next meeting.
One thing I might comment too is that we've met with the city a couple times on potentially them assisting in financing, funding these two studies. And the last meeting we had was pretty positive. And we may know by the next meeting too, whether they're on board or not too, so that'd fall in line with having it at the next meeting. Any more discussion?
Yes.
Nathan?
I'm wondering why the proponents of these two projects haven't been here. I mean, we've had this on our agenda for how many meetings now? And I haven't seen them here during, I don't think, any of those last
Emily
meetings.
was here at one meeting.
They were both here on the August
Yeah,
budget
they were,
meeting too.
that's right, they were here.
didn't
at the
know
Back
first
in
meeting.
August?
Yeah.
Okay. So
then
it's
Emily was at-
January now.
And Emily was at another meeting, too, was here also.
I don't recall seeing her.
She was at the city meeting with us.
And she came, they both attended the city meeting with us and explained to the city, you know, what we're doing, and they had a lot of good questions answered, that they answered for the city.
But the city meeting is not our meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. That was my question.
Well, I think it's certainly appropriate to ask them to attend the next meeting if they want to.
Well, I think it's certainly appropriate to expect somebody to be here if they're wanting funding from us.
Well taken. Are we ready to vote on the motion?
Was the motion to table both items? or
Yep.
both?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I have a question,
Okay,
if I
Dan?
may, if your motion, Director Mack, would include allowing them, if they should arrive late, to be placed at the end of our agenda, if we would have time to accommodate that?
With kind of our issue previous meeting, I would say next meeting. They were aware of the agenda and we need to move, so I'd rather end our tenure here on a high note and in a timely fashion.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Bob?
They were on the meeting agenda and we pushed it to this meeting, because we knew that we were getting new directors, and also we had a time constraint on that last meeting, and it still took 6 hours.
And they weren't here then.
And they weren't here for that, so.
Well,
Dan?
I have a question on what we're doing. Are we postponing this till the next?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be an agenda item.
So I think we want to use the word postpone maybe.
Table.
Table.
Yes, Steve?
I almost agree with him. Whenever I was on the council, we always postponed it to the next meeting. We never table anything, because table usually takes it off the agenda.
Well, the motion we have right now is to table it.
You wanna
I
s-
think
we have to-
change it.
Will the author of the motion and the second to agree to change the term to postpone rather than table?
I would be in agreement.
Sure.
To postpone, yeah.
And Dan, could we make sure that somebody contacts, because I'm new, I'd like to.
We'll get a hold of him.
I'll do what you said, I'll go, but I may have questions at the time after reading it, so I'd like to ask questions.
Sure.
And if you have, you're going to be getting your own email address, and we use those regularly, and hopefully there'll be a whole pile of stuff in your email. Check your junk mail.
Any more discussion? Dan?
Could we request that they make available via the internet their reports, final reports from the previous phases?
They are.
Are those
They're
available
there.
now?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay,
They're on
so
there now.
They're on our
They're available
website.
now, fair
Yeah,
enough.
they're available.
They're on the West Dakota Water Development District site.
I'd even volunteer to help answer any, rudimentary questions, but these two people are the ones, and possibly why we want to have another stab at actually increasing the number of sites.
Right. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
One, no. Nathan. Okay, that's items 13 and 14. Item 15, Missouri River Allotment Study Update. Dr. Katzenstein. Do you want to introduce?
Absolutely.
All right.
So for those of you I haven't met, and for those of you out in the internet world, my name is Kurt Katzenstein. I'm a geological engineering faculty member at the School of Mines. I took over as the lead PI on this project a couple months ago with the death of Alvis Lisenbeam. I'm sure many of you heard about that. So he was the one that kind of got this thing rolling and assembled our team, and we've kept moving forward. We were going to give this kind of an interim update last month, but with the new board members, we decided to hold off until this month so you guys could learn about what we're doing. I'll try to keep this brief so we can keep moving tonight, but certainly here to answer any questions you may have. So our team, myself, Dr. Scott Kenner in civil engineering, Arden Davis in geological engineering. We had Alvis in the beginning of the project until he became ill. And then I've been very lucky to pique the interest of Mark Anderson, and he's been helping us out a lot with what we've been doing. Could I get you to go ahead and maximize this so we can see the full slides? Or
Well,
you don't do that?
I'd rather not, because it messes up my screen recorder.
Okay. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay. Okay. So the background here, as many of you know, is that the West Dakota Water Development District has maintained what is called a future use permit for Missouri River water since the mid 70s, and it's in the amount of about 10,000 acre feet or 13.8 cubic feet per second. And it's if you look at the original documentation, it states that it's for future municipal, industrial, commercial, and rural water system use. So the question came up from the board. Well, first of all, should you continue to maintain this permit? It's a nominal fee. One of the advantages to the permit that West Dakota holds is that it's early in the pecking order. And this is done by kind of a seniority rank, and so you guys are close to the top of the list. And so the question was, should we maintain it? Should you maintain it? And if you do, if you ever wanted to use it, how could you get it here? Or what are the options to get it here? And so we came up with a project that would do that, as well as try to look at some of the published work to decide kind of how far down the road this might be that you might need to use it. And that's a difficult question to answer, as we'll see here in a minute. So we have that on the agenda for our work here. Now, of course, if you had something like this and you wanted to try to bring water 200 miles from the Missouri River to this area, once you're going through all that trouble, you may as well look into other folks in the region that could utilize the alignment if it's a pipeline. And the obvious partner for this would be Rapid City. They also hold a future use permit on the Missouri River of a larger magnitude, up to 66,000 acre-feet per year, which is about 92 CFS. So we're working with folks there at the city. We're going to do that a lot more here in this semester as we get ramped up here again. And so the question is, okay, well, can you go to the next slide, please? So our objectives were, how is Rapid City going to evolve? Not just Rapid City, but Western Pennington County. How are these areas going to evolve in the future, population-wise? How is that going to drive demand for water use in the future? And we can make some assumptions there. What types of sources do we have currently that we utilize? Where do they become overtaxed or overused? And we're still working on that question. And then if we decide, or if you decide that it's necessary in the future to use this water, what are the challenges to get it out here? What are the options? And so I'll talk a little bit about each of these objectives here and show you what we've done so far, and then where we're going to go. And you can stop me anytime, by the way, if you'd like to ask questions as we go. So the first thing is population, which drives your demand, obviously. And so we have some assumptions you can make if you look in the text for how you project population. And so we've done that, used a couple of different assumptions, and you wind up with a pretty widespread and range of future populations for this region. So we did that for both Rapid City and Pennington County. We're going to be comparing this with what folks at the city are projecting as well, to see how it compares. And if you make a very simple assumption, which seems to hold pretty true for this region, of 150 gallons per day per person, you can start to forecast demand of water as well. And so we've done that. So just to run through a couple of plots here with some preliminary data. Here's a plot just for Rapid City only. So we made plots for Rapid City and Pennington County. We didn't just do Western Pennington County because, as we all know, there's not a whole lot of population that's going to drive the curves differently in Eastern Pennington County. So for now, we've only done all of Pennington County. But here's Rapid City. So the solid blue line shows actual population values from census data. And then there's a series of different assumptions that can be made based on growth curves, based on linear and polynomial fits and all kinds of different things. So in reality, you can start to kind of decide where you think population is going to go. We're going to do some more scientific assuming later on here, but for now, this is what we have. Yes, sir.
How do you think those growth curves would be affected by the availability of water?
Well, that's an important question, and obviously they could be impacted. It's not what we're looking at currently in our study, but obviously that's a big question. So this was Rapid City, so showing population projection. So if we go to the next slide, it's similar, look to the curves, but the numbers. Oh, I'm sorry. This is water demand. So what we've done is we've taken those values of population for Rapid City and multiplied them by that 150 gallons per day, and then converted the demand to cubic feet per second. And so this will become more important in a minute when we talk about supply. But just to show you where that curve came from, you can go to the next slide, please. So here's similar plots for Pennington County. Very similar to what we saw as far as the shape of the curve for Rapid City. That's not surprising because Rapid City, is the major player here in Pennington County. But again, the numbers are quite are a little bit larger here, And if you then convert that to demand to the next slide, you can see that they have a similar trend. So if you look at the green points that have been overlain on this plot, those are actual water use values for Pennington County, just to show that our assumption of 150 gallons per day per person is reasonable. Now, obviously, you have variability there. It's, assuming 150 gallons per person per day falls apart as soon as you start to think about climate. Around here, we know if it's a wet year, you're not going to use as much water to irrigate. Or many, there's many reasons why you won't use as much water. If it's a drought year, you're going to be demanding a lot more water. And when we come back in a minute here to this plot again, when I put on here supply or estimated supply, it becomes even more important to discuss that because, as we know, when you have a wet year, demand goes down and supply goes up, which is good. When you have a dry year, these are inverse relationships. Demand goes up and supply goes down. And those are the years that are really going to be concerning as we move forward with our study. So this is just the water demand projection for Pennington County. And in a minute, we'll overlay what potential supply could be. Yes, sir.
Is this is strictly based on population?
Correct.
What about the Rapid Valley Conservancy?
Good point. So this does include Rapid Valley as population.
But what about water use?
Well, this includes that because we're assuming population times the number of 150 gallons per person per day.
Yeah, I understand that. But they use a lot of water for irrigation out there.
True. Yeah.
I mean, more than 150 gallons per capita per day.
But the average person wouldn't in a house in an apartment won't use 150 gallons per person per day. So the average allows for that, as I understand it.
Okay. So, but the irrigation
You're right.
district uses a lot of water.
The green plots there are water use for Pennington County, so that would also include that. So it shows that the assumption is somewhat sound. I agree with your point you're making.
So they use a lot of water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you're looking at that at all.
We haven't yet, but we certainly could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So the question is, and this is a question for many of you in the room, you have a lot of background in this, how much water is there here? And it's difficult to put a single number on this because, as you know, in this region we have a series of wet years, spring flows increase, water levels increase, groundwater levels increase, surface water flows increase. When you have a series of dry years, the opposite happens to all those things. We're looking through all of the published literature to try to better understand what kind of supplies we have, where they come from, their magnitudes, and trying to look into and forecast when we might need to utilize this potential extra source of water in the future. So, as I mentioned before, the influence of water use in this area on spring flow is very important in particular because as you use more groundwater, your spring flow begins to decrease. And that's a very dangerous thing for our groundwater system here. And so it's very important that we understand, even though there still might be spring flow occurring, at some point when we get below a certain amount of spring flow, we're going to really adversely impact our water supply. And so we're working further on that now to try to understand where is this kind of line we don't want to cross as far as use is concerned. So when you start to look at available sources in magnitude, we made some assumptions here, and these are early values. You can go to the next slide, please, and compare it to our demand curve. This is for Pennington County. So I've created a little box there, and this is somewhat conservative in the direction of drier years, okay, based on what could be pulled out of our aquifers. We assumed about a 15 CFS from the Madison and Minnelusa aquifers, about 20 CFS from the creek, 15 to 20 CFS from the creek. That's a lower bound, but it's a safe, seems to be a pretty safe lower bound for what annual mean stream flows in Rapid Creek have been. And so we come up with this range of potential locally available water resources for the future, and we're going to work on firming this up even more as we move forward. But what it suggests is if you look at the growth curves for water demand, that this may not be as far off as some might think. you know, depending on which curve you think is going to be accurate, you know, it can range anywhere from the lower bound there, which is suggests it'll never be needed, all the way up through the other three, suggesting that it's not that far off in the future that we might need this further future water source. Now, again, this is assuming that blue bar there is assuming average to drought conditions. Okay, obviously, if we have wet seasons, you know, that's going to change this a lot. But if we had a prolonged drought in this region, you know, there is a chance that we might need to find some more water for the region here. So go to the next one, please. So our part 3 here is, okay, if we want to utilize this this source, how you know, how would we get it here? And the first thing to do is to look at existing rural water systems and pipelines here in the western part of our state. And so that's what this slide is suggesting here. Is so we've had a student. I forgot to introduce our students, by the way. Our students are over here. This is Caleb Hedman. He's a civil engineer. We have Reagan West here in the middle. She's a geological engineer. And then Haley Notaboom. She's also a geological engineer. And they've been the ones working on this project with us. Sorry to forget to. I was supposed to do that on the early slide. I apologize for that. But so we've been in contact with all of the rural water systems. In fact, Caleb's been doing that with help from Scott Kenner, and talking about with each of those folks that run those systems, their pipe size, the capacity of those systems, and you know, where those systems serve. And if you look at that upper table there, it shows you the ones that we've been talking with, and those pipes range anywhere from about 2 feet down to just 1.5 inches. And ours, if this were to be developed in conjunction with both the West Dakota and the Rapid City future use permits to their capacity, would be a much larger pipe than this. It'd be just a napkin calculation on the order of 4 feet or so in diameter if you wanted to transport that much water. Anyway, so question is, if you want to piggyback on existing rights of way, that's the easiest way probably to get it here. So the next step of our project is to do a better job of delineating exactly where these pipelines exist currently. That information is not as easy to gather as you might expect. Well, it's probably as difficult to gather as you would hope, actually, because you wouldn't want any kind of vandalism or anything going on. And look into where these pipelines currently go. Can any of these capacities be piggybacked upon? And if not, you know, where would we put things like pump stations? Where would we put our you know, source for the water itself in the Missouri River? And then how would we work it to the western part of the state towards us? What did I forget on this slide here? Yeah, so Caleb's also been looking into existing water rights here in Rapid City, looking at licenses versus future use permits and existing permits as well. This dovetails with one of the projects that Dr. Kenner has going on currently as well. And so that's where we are. So if you go to the next slide, please. So next, again, like I said, look into rights of way for the existing water systems, where we put the pump stations. You know, what types of pipes pipeline sizes and volumes could we handle with specific infrastructure that we might look into. Maybe even get preliminary idea of price, which is difficult. But you know, one of the really good corollaries here might be the Lewis and Clark pipeline in the southeastern part of our state. Similar in scope, not quite as long as this one would be, but and then we're working with potential collaborators such as Rapid City and others that we'll identify as we go forward. So that's where we are currently. Again, this is kind of what 2/5 of the way through our project, so we still have some time. It ends in the end of August, so we're working hard to answer these questions. So I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
I've got a few questions
Sure.
here. So the permit that Rapid City holds, do you have any idea what the seniority of that is?
It's just below ours, or yours, I shouldn't say ours, but
Good.
1977.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we were like number 4 in the state or something?
Yeah,
so
it's something
there
like
are
that, 5 or 6, it's up there. Yep.
Okay. Are there any other permittees in western South Dakota here that could potentially benefit?
That's a good question. I'd have to go back and look. It's a good question. Yeah. You guys don't remember? I don't think there are. Nothing jumps to mind, but.
Good. All right, one of your slides mentioned license versus, okay, what does that mean?
Kaylee, you can provide anything? Still looking at that, or?
Well, I talked to Mark Raff at the DNR, and what he said is that you get a permit for a project, and then after that project is complete, they inspect, and then you license it for the amount of water they actually use. So I do have notes, more detailed, I guess, that I could present to you guys as well.
Okay, so the permit gets converted into a license?
After the project is complete, for the actual water that was used.
Okay. So, I guess we got to follow on then. So, let's say if we've got a permit for 10,000 acre feet and we're only pulling 5,000 acre feet. So we're licensed for 5,000?
From what I understand, that is correct.
Do we still retain our other 5,000 if we want that for
I believe
future
so,
use?
Yeah.
If it's a future use permit.
That's true, yeah. You wanna get up and introduce yourself, get up and,
I can just introduce him if that works too. Or
no, he can, have him speak up there in the
Okay.
mic.
Sorry, Caleb.
We'll get him on,
You're doing a good job.
we'll get him on record. I think you're correct. You apply for a water right and you have a project and you
Yeah,
use
water use.
whatever amount of that water right that you actually end up using then is licensed. And whatever remains stays in the future use.
There is
So-
also incorporated, so if there's multiple permits, and for the same project, one is licensed, the other kind of gets wrapped in to the primary.
Could I have him state his name so that we can go back?
Sure, you can identify yourself for the record.
Caleb Hedman.
Thank you, Caleb.
You're from Rapid City?
Yep, Rapid City School of Mines.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Stop using someone at 5,000.
Yep.
Do you lose it?
I haven't really gotten info on that one. So
Well,
That's a good question.
that is a good question. I can.
What was the question?
If you stop
If you
using it
license
on
for 5,000 and you stop pulling 5,000, do you lose some of your water rights?
Well, the DENR does check those water rights occasionally. I'm not sure what the time period is. And so if they're not using it, they can actually, cross off the water right if you're not using it. If you use it, if you don't use it, you don't
Do they
use
give
it.
that to somebody else, sell it?
No, they generally just put it back into the priority list. I know back in the eastern South Dakota, probably, you could speak more to that, Jay, and those irrigation ones, if they're not using it, they can lose it over time. Mark? If you're gonna talk, come on up here. Identify yourself, where you're from, who you are, who you're affiliated with.
Hi, Mark Anderson. Still employed part-time like Dan with the U.S. Geological Survey, but also an adjunct professor at the School of Mines as well. Just to clarify real quick, future use permits have to be justified. You can't just hold it. You have to explain to the state why you think you have reason to believe that you're going to use that permit in the future.
Correct.
They've been kind of lax about
every
Missouri
7
River.
every 7 years.
Every 7 years you have to
Yeah.
justify, and that's what you're up against.
And we just renewed ours here recently, so.
So with regards to if you did actually build out construction and you were using 5,000, or you had the capability of using 5,000, and year after year after year, you only use 2,000. Under Western water law, it's use it or lose it. So you
Right.
potentially could lose it. Now, the state would not begin any action of abandonment for at least 3 years. So you've got that window, and then actually, they don't have a whole staff of people that go around checking these things, and they don't have in fact, they have some real old water rights that they've been talking about cleaning up.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's gonna happen suddenly.
Correct.
See what I mean? You would have opportunity to come back and say, well, yeah, we were getting our system built out, and so we're gonna use the 5,000, but the rest of it would be, the balance would be thrown into the future use permit. which has to be justified. You can't.
Right.
But I might add one thing with regards to the project here is that the idea of needing this much water in the Missouri River water here in Rapid City for the immediate future is unlikely. It would be very expensive, but it would, in my humble opinion, would be foolish to let that water right go, because you let go of your priority, your position in the pecking order, and it's hard to know what the future may hold. And as Director Govik just mentioned, water is the fuel of economic development. If you're going to have a growing community, you need water. And so for the cost of retaining that, it's a good idea, but the students are digging into this. This is one of these questions, you remember this, Dan, from your days in Public Works Department. This is one of these things that's been hanging over Rapid City for years. Well, when are we going to build a pipeline from the Missouri River and get that water over here? I think we'll have for the board and the community good answers of you know, what the right is, what it's going to take to get it here, what the justification is based on population, irrigation growth, and then the whole question of, you know, the priority if you need it in the future. And one of the other aspects of this thing we really talked about, but it's important to keep in mind that the Missouri River Indian water rights have not been quantified. And if you need a quick refresher on the Treaty of 1868, it grants the Great Sioux Nation everything west of the east bank of the Missouri River. So I'll predict at some point in the future you're going to see Indian claims to a significant portion of that river, and having your water right in that system when the settlement discussions occur sometime in the future is going to be wise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good advice.
Any other questions?
Okay. I have a comment.
Come on up to the podium, if you would. Thank you.
Chuck Jasper, I just want to follow up a little bit on what Mr. Anderson said. He was talking about the Winters Doctrine, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case, which the holding is that when the reservations were created, all the water was reserved from the Missouri River for their future needs. Now that's a rather amorphous concept, but as Mr. Anderson pointed out, I expect in the future they will be making demands. And that will precede any water right Rapid City has or any water right that the West Dakota has, because that goes back to the 1868 treaty.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a comment. It's something to watch, I guess, as we look at what happens in South Dakota. There are some ongoing things right now in North Dakota that could give us some insights, particularly with the Winters Doctrine and how Standing Rock is approaching some of the either quantification or non-quantification of their water rights, as they are in opposition to the Red River water supply system that is being proposed to develop water from Missouri River to Fargo, which is 165-mile pipeline, a little bit bigger than what you thought. You know, ours might be required to be. Theirs is 72 inches. You know, I did a rough calculation, matched up with yours, about 46 inches. That's about $1 billion project they're looking at.
Easy.
So just to watch that and maybe factor it into some of your economic analysis of real-time costs, you know, for what's going on right now in North Dakota, which is could help scale some of those things.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
As you and I discussed, along with others at one of our previous meetings last summer, I guess what I'd like to see as a result of this is information that we can use to approach decision makers, okay, for getting this project funded. And decision makers like to have options, okay? So what I'd like to see is something tiered. In other words, if we can get, if you want to put it in terms of acre feet, 2,000 acre feet a year, pipe size of this, X number of pumps of this, would cost this much in initial capital cost, it would cost this much to operate and maintain the system, ballpark estimates, okay? And then tier it up, 4,000 acre feet would be this, 6, 8, whatever. And I don't know what kind of increments you'd want to look at, but
Sure.
something reasonable for decision makers as they're looking at this, okay? So the bottom line to me is I don't want this just to be another study that sits on somebody's shelf and gathers dust. Okay? I want this to be a good expenditure of taxpayer funding that we can use to present to decision makers. Okay? So that's the goal. And you guys might be the ones presenting it, I don't know, depending on how he manages this. So put some numbers in there that you can defend. Okay?
Anything else?
So your timetable then is, what is your timetable?
I have to go back and look at the proposal. I think that there was just this interim report and then the final. But if you
Okay.
would like us to come back at the end of the semester, for instance, we could probably do that if it's something before we hit the summer. We're going to lose 2 of our students, I think, at the end of the semester. You guys are both not going to be on for the summer, I think. Is that? We can talk about that. But I know Caleb
Okay.
is here for the summer.
Okay, so possibly another
So
interim.
we can discuss that
report.
if you'd
Okay.
like. Yeah, sure.
Any other questions?
I've got another comment I guess I'd like to make
Okay,
real
Nathan.
quick. From my perspective, this is the kind of project that this board was set up to try to develop, okay? And this is one of the things that we talked about again at our previous meeting. It's projects like this, I think, that are critical for areas like ours. Basically semi-arid regions of the western United States, and we're kind of on the edge of that. There are other parts of the country east of the Mississippi where water isn't an issue, but in our area, water is an issue. It will become a greater issue over time, and I think if we can get ahead of the curve on this, it'll be greatly to our advantage, especially economically, because I think it will drive growth. So,
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was item 15. Item 16, discussion of the withdrawal of the petition for declaratory ruling regarding administrative rule of South Dakota ARSD 74530104. Director Mack.
So looking at the notes of the previous, looking at South Dakota Codified Law 9-32-8 and 9-32-10, and looking at the expenditure of the $7,500 to put the item of petition to the South Dakota Water Management Board, I wanted to have an open discussion with the new board to see if they would like to continue this. I know we have Chuck Gasper in the audience. Chuck, do you want to give us a highlight of what is going on with this?
Yes, at present, it's scheduled for the March hearing before the Water Board, and it would be conducted by an administrative law judge. That's the present status. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
How much money have you spent today on this?
$3,000 and some dollars. Dan might be able to give you
Okay.
the exact amount. Do you remember what it is?
It was slightly over 3,000. I could look it up if you want.
Yeah, I was slightly over. I don't remember exactly how much, but it was not even 3,500. It was
Okay.
quite a bit less.
Okay, thanks.
Okay?
I would like to say from experience, usually case prep is the bulk of any court case. And if we're only just waiting on a hearing, it would do a serious injustice to Mr. Schwab, who came forward, and some other people in the county that have a serious question about this. That if we just paid for half of it and then threw the rest of the money, threw that half of money away without finishing it.
Well, I understand. As you know, I was not in favor of spending that money or even proceeding with this action that we took. And I know there's a lot of people that are upset with the board for doing that. Not just the money part of it, but just, we're not a regulatory agency. We shouldn't be dictating to other our partner state agencies in the city of Rapid City and the county of Pennington County who set those regulations. It's not our purview to be involved with that at all.
Right, but we did ask them before it was required to have an attorney. We didn't decide we need an attorney. We requested in writing that they just tell us. And instead, they said, go get an attorney, then ask us. We had our hands tied.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to comment on your comments. We are not dictating anything to anybody. We had constituents, more than one, appear before this board requesting relief, requesting an answer to a simple question. Does state law mean what it says? That's all we've been trying to do, is get a response from another state agency. We sent a letter to them asking them to please respond. They did not respond. This forced our hand to having to appear before the board, and you can't just appear before the board. You have to have an attorney to appear before the board. This is part of the story that the Rapid City Journal did not suggest in any way. So the presentation by the Rapid City Journal has been very biased. It has not been truthful. It has specifically ignored those facts that we have had more than one person appear before this board asking if we could get an answer to that question. And we were forced into the situation of having to hire an attorney to simply go before the board.
Actually, Robert had his hand up
Robert,
first.
okay.
I'll let him.
Thanks, Tom.
We'll do that, and then, Mike, we'll get to you, Mike.
Okay. Well, first of all, we asked in March, and it was a polite ask as opposed to a letter. Then we found out when they didn't get to that, we sent them a letter, they didn't reply. And, you know, each time we've had to postpone actions on this. And the last time, the reason we asked Jasper to be our lawyer on this issue, we asked for that for specific reasons. He's been a director on this board. He's a lawyer. The state said you must have a lawyer to represent your position, because this is why some of the other people who had tried were denied, and or else ignored. And so really they had no other place to go. And I think we acted correctly. We hired a lawyer who actually gave us a bargain basement price on trying to help because of his experience with this. And I think he's been a good choice. And I really would hope that new members of the board would, once again, refer to our website, go to the meetings in which you see this same action brought up, and listen to the listen to that conversation, because many of the questions that you will probably have been talked about, and I just encourage you to look at it. I have to agree with Director Jovic on the misrepresentation of what happened on this board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tom?
So I started looking into it, and I was rereading the notes. And Joel Andine, the city attorney, came last meeting and basically spelled out why they're disputing this, or why they're challenging it. And I'm reading from the notes. The city position is that we have their own authority to regulate septic systems, even those built after 1976, under the city and county's police powers to protect the general public's health, safety, and welfare. And that is what the city adopted the rules for the septic systems. So that's in the notes. So I go, okay, so what are police powers? Because I don't know what police powers are. So I started looking nationally about police powers. And then I was like, okay, how does this affect South Dakota? So I looked at the South Dakota Municipal League, and then I found the codified law, which is 9-32-8, and it states the protection of public water supply. Every municipality should have the power to prevent the pollution of or injury of any water supply belonging to the municipality or any public water supply within or with or within 1 mile of the city limits of the municipality. Hence what Mr. Landine was talking about when he came to visit
But
us.
that's in debate right now because, and if I can speak real fast, the cities claim that 3 mile buffer. They're not claiming a 1 mile buffer. They're
city
claiming that
claims a 1 mile buffer?
3 mile buffer.
I don't
They have
think
a
that's
1
correct.
and a 3 mile buffer. And that's part of the problem. They're claiming two different buffers based on police powers. And police powers are to protect public water. And if anybody can go up to Seeger Drive and tell me where there's public water, where Mr. Schwab live, I'd challenge you to find a stream within a mile of Seeger Drive. It's dry as parched, and you're not. I dare say the reservoir is more than a mile deep.
But if you actually look at what the municipality has, it's 1 mile from anything. So from the airport, there's a 1 mile buffer. From wherever the city limits end, it's a 1 mile buffer. It doesn't have to be public water supply, just in general for the police power.
Right,
These
but that's
specific are just for the water.
Right, to protect public water. There is no public water that's affecting. If anything, the data from the study we did shows there's a good potential possibility that the city is contaminating Rapid Creek with human fecal matter, which is one of the studies we were discussing.
All I'm just saying is this is what they're going to run to. And looking at the May 4th meeting in the Mitchell Republic, they said that they do not have jurisdiction to regulate this.
Do you understand there's no other septic inspections in the U.S.? Only for new projects, not for existing systems. It's easy to tell when there's a broken septic system. It collapses or it doesn't function. But nobody I've ever heard of in my 20 plus years of construction ever said, hey, let's go find out if septic systems leak and we're going to stick our head inside and look around. And suppose you would see inside the septic tank, what do you see? You see water sitting in the tank. Only if it's up to the top is there a problem. Well, easy. If it's up to the top, the homeowner already knows there's a problem because their toilet won't flush. Or it's breached the ground.
Anything else? Nathan?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to Director Max. Even if you accept that as the issue that the city has, the issue that the constituents, our constituents have that appeared before this board hinges around a grandfather clause written by the state that suggests that people who had their systems installed prior to a certain date are exempt. And therein lies the question. So if they're exempt, then why are they being pursued? So that's the problem. We're simply asking the state to clarify that does this exemption mean what it says? That's a reasonable question. There's nothing wrong with asking any governmental entity if a law means what it says. There's nothing wrong with that. That's all we're doing. So we're doing this on behalf of people that have appeared before this board asking us to do that because they can't find anybody else that will act on their behalf.
Mike, do you want to come to the podium again? He's already identified himself.
Thank you. I emailed this to all the directors,
Yep.
current and former. If you'd please pass those down. I just brought the text form tonight for copy. And I think I've got enough for everybody. If we scatter those down the way. If I'm short one, I gave one to Jay Gilbertson, and I'm sorry about that. Jay is, may have to share. Not sorry about Jay being here, no. If those of you who don't know Jay Gilbertson, he's kind of like the granddad of the water development districts in the state of South Dakota. And we're fortunate enough to have Jay attend a meeting with our executive board this fall to discuss this very item and others. Jay didn't see a problem with any of that. So if you didn't get a chance to read the attachments, this is my last official act as your chair and a director on New Year's Eve, about 7 p.m. I sent the email out to all of you. Hopefully you got it. As you look at these sheets, I'd like to tell you there are a lot more out there. I just cited a few exemptions in administrative rule. So each of these stands on their own. No different than the one we're talking about that Dan had up on here for 7453-0104. So as you look at the small town exemption, exhibits item 2, there's an exemption. It exhibits no groundwater contamination at the disposal site. 4A talks about an aquifer. The large paragraph. If a new MSWLF meets the criteria, it may petition a board for a hearing. Page 2. Designation of exempted aquifer. Exemption of a portion of an aquifer from protection does not currently serve as a source of drinking water. 3 items below it. Produces hydrocarbons. Situated depth or location. Recovery water for drinking is economically or technologically impractical. So contaminated would be economically, technically practical to render the water fit for human consumption. That's an exemption for that body of water. Open discharge systems. That's an open discharge of water. Page 3, emissions exemptions. Were airborne contaminants. And people are so riled up over the small dollar amounts that this board handles in so many ways. The smallest dollar amounts bring the most attention. It's almost ironic. And the principle of a constituency that asks representatives to vote for them or get in front of another elected body to get a decision. Is there a fear of that decision that's going to bring the walls down? I'm surprised that this is such a dichotomous issue that we are debating it. We've kicked in 3,000 and this man's got us on the table, on the agenda, in Pier on March 6th in front of an administrative law judge that probably has a better chance of rendering a decision than we would out of the Water Management Board that's punting this thing every time they have to look at it. They punted the letter we sent to them for their May meeting. They didn't want to touch it. They didn't even answer us. Is that arrogance? Is that responsible? Or does that go away? So all we're asking for is an answer to the question. And out of good sense, and if you have constituents that fit any of these exceptions or exemptions, I hope to hear from them. I'd just like to continue doing the business we started. Thank you.
I do have one thing to add. Just to be clear, both the administrative law judge and the state water board have the authority to rule on this. If somebody else brings it forward to them, the same situation. The fact of the matter is we've already paid most of the way to get there already. And if they had answered us when we asked, it would have been answered a year ago.
For the cost of a postage stamp.
For 55 cents.
I might just comment, we're talking about constituents here. There was 3 individuals that I had contact that were asking for this. But I can tell you, the people, my constituents other than those 3 were absolutely opposed to what this board did on this issue. And they just feel we did a wrong thing. It wasn't unanimous. I voted against it. I think Tom voted against it too. And I know the city of Rapid City and Pennington County aren't happy with us. They're spending money opposing this. Both of them are on record in opposition to this hearing. And so I personally would like to see what the new board members feel we should do, whether we should withdraw from this hearing. I know people would like to see us do that. A lot of them would do. And put this thing to rest.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to that.
I'm going to have a fellow, he's had his hand up longer.
Mr.
Getty. Mr. Getty.
Hello, my name's Ernie Getty. I'm a past director here, and I'm a citizen of Rapid Valley. There's been a lot of controversy on this issue, obviously, in the news and among all of us. And I urge the new directors and the old directors. We're entrusted with monies in the form of taxes to do the most good for the municipality of Rapid City and for western South Dakota. But I urge you not to forget the taxpayer that's funding our board, the little guy, if you were, that seeks help. I have a septic tank and a water well that I've maintained for 40 years. I'm in compliance with Pennington County. I have no problem with that. I urge you to think about the oath you took tonight on the new directors and past directors. And part of that oath is you swore to support the laws of South Dakota. Now, there are local laws and there are state laws, and we all want those to work together. And there's been a lot of confusion on this issue, I think, in the media, and therefore with our constituents, that they don't understand what we're trying to do with this latest allocation. We're trying to clarify a law that we believe, I believe, starts from the state and works its way down. Now, I realize the city and the county have jurisdiction on a great many things, but I think clarity on this issue would help you steer forward with your constituents' issues that they may have with their septic tanks and their water wells and their water quality in general. So I urge you to keep an open mind on this issue. We have considerable expenses on it already. I think going forward it would provide you clarity with future issues that maybe come before the board. Thank you.
Yes.
The other thing I would like to add is, you might not think it, but septic systems are a integral part of the West Dakota Water Development District. We even have a funding mechanism for persons in need to replace or partially fund defective systems, whether it be an individual homeowner or a community, like a community septic system or community wells. That is in our preview. It's in our packet. It's one of the things that we're called on to look at all the time. So I would ask that you, let's say you decide, no, we don't want to do this. We're going to save $7,500. No, you're not going to save up $7,500. We've already spent about $3,000. And if we send an attorney out to Pier for half a day and the judge rules, that's it, it's over. And we have done it at a huge cost savings.
Nathan?
I'd like to respond again to your comments, Mr. Chairman. If my only source of information on this issue was the local media, and in particular, again, the Rapid City Journal, I would probably think along the lines with what you're claiming to be the majority of the people that you have talked to that are not in favor of us moving forward. I think if somebody was actually familiar with the real issues, in other words, they're coming to the meetings, they're listening to the discussions, I think they would be much more prone to supporting it. Again, I go back to, there's nothing wrong with simply asking for clarification on a state law. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we're doing exactly what we should be doing here.
Steve?
Nathan, you just said that if somebody knew what the real issue was,
Yep.
in the journal. So I guess my question is to you, explain to me what the real issue is.
The real issue is there are people that are being pursued by Pennington County for violation of a law that, or an ordinance that Pennington County imposed that is in contradiction to state law for these particular people. And these people they live outside the at least in one case, or in both cases, they live outside the jurisdiction of Rapid City. They can't go to the city council for relief. So they came to us, asking us to ask the state on their behalf if the state law means what it says. The state law specifically says that they are not subject to that ordinance because they were grandfathered in by virtue of the date at which their system was installed. So to me, this should be a slam dunk issue, but they're being pursued. And one of them has been, maybe both, have been convicted. Don't know where their cases are. But to me, this sounds like government overreach. I don't think that it's unreasonable for people to come to our board as another state entity to ask another state entity if a law means what it says. It's very simple.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, let me just comment on what he said. You know, the city of Rapid City and Pennington County have regulations for septic systems, inspection of septic systems, and what they have to do to make sure that these systems are working properly. And the city attorney was here at the last meeting. The city of Rapid City and Pennington County can have more stringent regulations than the state regulations, and which they do. And taking into consideration this grandfathering thing, the city does not can say the grandfathering doesn't.
Mr. Chair,
just
to
a second.
suspend ex ofacto though is illegal.
Can I, please? I let you speak. Let me finish what I'm saying, if you would. Thank you. So the city can set more stringent regulations, and so can Pennington County, and more stringent than what the state regulations are, which they do. And Joel was here and explained that to the board. So the state law with this exemption of being grandfathered in doesn't comply or doesn't go into effect here in Pennington County or the city of Rapid City. So we're spending money down there for.
Right, you're believing one opinion and claiming it as fact, though, Mr. Chair. To suspend ex ofacto hasn't been done in the entire nation. The whole nation, nobody's suspended ex ofacto. And the second thing is representation and taxation without representation. Mr. Schwab, who came in last, lives outside city limits, but was fined by the city of Rapid. They told him to go to his councilman.
He's
Who's his councilman? He doesn't live in city
within
limits.
The jurisdiction of Rapid City, 1 mile.
That was part of my follow-up question, and part of it was, you know, in looking here, if they had, we talked to, I think it was Mike?
Yes.
Talked about an aquifer exemption and getting back, you know, so I'm looking at both. This it says if it affects drinking water, and I remember being on the council, we were concerned back then, we had studies going on because we were worried about some of those septic tanks getting fecal matter into the city drinking water. So again, I'm looking at this and you're talking about the mile. Exemptions don't apply to something that's gonna, you know, harm your water system. You know, that's, so I understand that, but so we're within the mile limit. My next question would be, when I'm looking at this, is the aquifer, are they over an aquifer? Is there something that's gonna cause contamination into our water with those, I guess is my question.
The answer is the Minnelusa and Minnelusa aquifer runs the entire region all the way from here to Montana. The problem is where's our DNR guys? How many feet deep? How many feet of bedrock? Like in the Rapid City region, approximately in the plains.
I actually go out on some of the installations to help the city of Rapid City and Pennington County with installations, and we have found bedrock right at the surface. Right at the surface.
At the springs?
No. In different areas, there's bedrock right at the surface. Sometimes there's a little soil layer, maybe 6 inches thick. Sometimes there's 4 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet.
But those areas usually near
We have
the,
an 8-foot pilot hole that they dig, and then we look at that profile of that pilot hole to see where the bedrock is.
I thought when we had the explanation is where the penetrations in the bedrock were mostly around the hills.
Well, yes, there is, but, and those are the recharge zones for the aquifers. And it just depends on where you are as to how much overburden or soil is on that, recharge zone.
Could you come to the podium and identify yourself, please?
Dan, how many feet deep is the city well into the aquifer?
Well, it depends on where it's at.
15, 20,000?
20,000 feet?
Or is it what, 5, 10?
Depends on where you're at. The
I'm
closer you
sorry,
get, the closer you.
Mr. Bialotta.
Yes,
My name's Joanne Noyes. I'm with the South Dakota Geological Survey, or the DNR portion, or the Geological Survey part of the DNR. Sorry, tongue-tied. I assist the City of Rapid City and Pennington County when they do installation inspections. And as to your question as to what the depth is to bedrock, in some areas, bedrock is at the surface. So in some instances, these property owners have to install different systems in order to come into compliance with the installation requirements.
Sure, you're talking a
And
mound
those are
system to create dirt to drain it on the
right,
surface.
either mound systems. Some you have even had to do an evaporation system. Some have to do holding tanks because there's not even an area for an evaporation system. So there are in some instances where they've had to have more stringent installation requirements.
But not for existing systems.
And existing systems, I don't go out on those inspections. Those inspections are done by the
But I was asking how
pumpers.
many feet deep is the bedrock between us and the aquifer?
And it just depends on where you are. The geology of the Black Hills is very complicated. The major aquifers, like you're talking about the Madison Aquifer, that's the Pahasapa limestone, and the Minnelusa Aquifer, those can be found at the surface. In some instances, they are found 1,000 feet deep, but it just depends on where you are.
Dan?
To me, these questions of how deep are the aquifer are details that are really not appropriate for discussion here. It's, you know, right where we're at, a round number guess would be the Minnelusa, perhaps 2,000 feet deep, the Madison another 500-600 below that. We're actually sitting on an alluvial aquifer that's just below the soil horizon. But these details are beyond us, or beyond the scope of what I think we need to discuss. I'd like to address, you know, the question you raised. You know, what do we hear from the general public? I heard a great deal from the general public, you know, in campaigning for this position, and categorically I heard no support whatsoever for this issue, and categorically what I heard was, you know, disbelief that taxpayer dollars was being used to fund this effort. Did you have a motion in mind?
Well,
Director
I'd like to, personally, I'd like to see us withdraw this, personally. But, I mean, we got 4 new board members here. You know, it was a different board that made that motion, and I was just really curious to see what your position would be
That's
on
my
this, and
perspective.
whether we should withdraw this petition or continue with it. And I think that's why Tom brought it up. Personally, I think we ought to withdraw it.
That's what my constituents tell me.
We did have people come to this board and specifically request it.
I'm aware of that, very aware.
Mr. Chair, as a new director, I also, you know, walked the streets and held some listening meetings up at Johnson Siding. You know, asked people what they were thinking about. Told them a little bit about my background, you know, as a scientist and in dealing with water. You know, trying to get their vote as I moved forward. And one of the things that I also heard, to some degree, mirrored, you know, what Director Driscoll indicated, that they were a little concerned that the board was poking into areas that appeared to them to be more of a regulatory nature versus, sort of trying to answer questions that would help, guide policy in the area going forward in terms of, some of the things that you mentioned, Director Govik, about, the volumes and the future needs, et cetera. They were a lot more concerned with that and thought that the narrow issue of perhaps someone who is having a problem with the county in terms of a regulatory issue should be more something that individual or group of individuals would pursue on their own, and maybe wasn't really the right thing for the board to be involved with. So that's what I heard from Area 1 folks in town, and then when I had some meetings out at Johnson Siding in particular.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
I guess my response would be, how would you feel if it was you being pursued?
Well, I'm kind of a small government guy, generally speaking, and I try and pull my own weight, so I would probably figure out how to generate another group of individuals who had similar problems or had a similar concern. We would join ourselves together, and then we would pursue, trying to either, get the issue taken care of at the county or the city level as we might have to, or I guess go to the state and ask for some clarification. But I would look at it as an individual or group of individuals.
So, Mr. Chair, follow up to that. That's what they've done. Okay, they've been trying, but this is, at least that's the impression that I get. Okay, I think this is a David and Goliath situation. They can't be heard in the city council. They've got the Rapid City Journal actively supporting big government, and so they're faced with a situation where it's just them with very limited resources. So what do? You turn to somebody who might be able to help. And again, there's nothing wrong with this board simply asking a question of another state entity. Does a law mean what it says? There's nothing wrong with that. It's a simple question. We didn't have to expend resources other than a postage stamp. If the state water board would have done their job originally, we wouldn't be expending any funds here. That's what we wanted. We simply wanted an answer to a question. We are trying to support constituents who have appeared before this board to get a simple question answered that deals with water, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Tom?
I make a motion to continue this declaratory ruling of the administrative rule of South Dakota 74-53-01-04, and let's vote on it.
You say continue?
Continue. So an aye would be to continue this. Nays would be to stop it.
Second.
Further discussion? I have one thing to add real fast. Just so everyone's aware, we don't collect fundraiser money. This isn't a non-profit. We are actually state elected officials. So if somebody's, even if 2 people, 3 people, 5 people come to you and go, hey, I have a problem, can you help? Do you turn a blind eye because 5 other neighbors go, I don't have that problem? To do that is a serious injustice to the populace. If 5 people come to you and say, my drinking well got polluted from ABC, do we ignore those 5 people because the 6 people down the road say their drinking water's fine? No, we're in the same situation. We have somebody who is following the rules as they've been written. We have a small government entity that tried to suspend ex facto, which is grandfather clause, which is never done nationwide, who told them there's no such thing as grandfather clause anymore, or we're exempt from grandfather clause, which hasn't been done city, county, state. So, I would urge you just to consider that fact. We're not some potluck taking funds from nonprofits and charities that we only give it out to people we seem fit. We have to dole it out to everybody. little and small, across the board, if people are in need. And so if somebody comes by and says, look, we're getting harmed, please help us, it's our duty as a state elected official to do our best to try to put them even. We're not trying to make them better, we're trying to make them whole.
Call the question.
Could I verify I got that right? So,
Yep.
Right, I have one question. When you say continue, you mean continue with the hearing?
Continue with the hearing as prescribed with what is being done. That is the motion on the table.
Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? If not, all in
is there
favor?
discussion?
What?
Is there any additional discussion?
No, when you call the question, there's no additional discussion.
Well, no, you can have additional.
I don't think you can.
Normally you had have a vote on whether, so you can overturn that vote. If he calls a question, you can vote on it and they can
Right, there's
overturn
been
the
no
question.
vote to call the question. There's still people that would like to comment. I think that's fair.
Well, when you call a question, there's no further
Call the
discussion.
question, then you have to go for a vote. Somebody
Yeah,
says
there's
no
no further
vote.
discussion after the question's called.
Well, it would be.
It hasn't been seconded.
Okay, if you call a vote, if you call a question, and somebody
Still hasn't
doesn't
been
want it
seconded.
called, then you can do a vote. Then you go back to
Okay,
discussion.
is there anybody object to the calling the question?
Mr. Williams, did you have a comment?
So I can comment now?
Yes.
Or we haven't had a vote
Yeah, is there anybody that objects to
to having a vote
the
to move it
question?
forward?
Yeah.
I don't have I would wait for discussion.
That's what
I'm
we're
gonna,
in.
I'm gonna call for the,
Well, we need a
vote.
second. There's only been a motion, no
oh, we
second.
don't have a second?
So that's what I was saying. Mr. Williams did have discussion, and there hasn't been a second.
I thought
Well, okay.
there is a second.
Okay, Jovan did. Well, there was a call to vote. You still have to have a second to the call to vote. There was a motion and then discussion. We were still in discussion and then a call to vote. There was no second to call to vote. Mr. Williams.
Do we know what do we have the rules, Robert's rules here, has what to do here?
Can I ask Jay maybe?
Nope.
He's out.
No,
I think it would just be prudent if Mr. Williams has one question that we give him his 30
right.
seconds.
Calling the question requires a formal motion,
And a second.
but I haven't, and it refers me to another part of the book.
Oh.
So I don't have an exact answer.
Oh, so since we don't have the exact answer, go ahead with your, whatever you're gonna
Okay.
say.
The question I had was, if we vote on this and we let it go ahead, our new members might have time to review what we've discussed in the past and then make a decision down the road, like February. We could probably bring this back up. Is that true or not?
My concern is that we did spend 30 minutes to get everybody on the idea that it will be another 30 minutes. I kind of want it to be either we're going or we're not. And granted, somebody could put it on the February agenda, but this is to
Move it forward.
Move it forward.
I would agree with that because I think that this was a ruling written by one state group similar to us and a state law which we have nothing really to do, which seemed to conflict. And in order to answer that question, I think that it has to be looked at and adjudicated. And that would be the reason that I vote for this.
Any other discussion? All right, the motion is to continue this ruling.
Mr. Jasper had his hand up times. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Mr. Jasper.
If I may, Chuck Jasper. Just to clarify, and this would be more for the new members, here's what it boils down to. The administrative rule we're talking about says that you are exempt if you had your installation prior to February 25th, 1975, unless your system has been changed or has been shown to cause groundwater to be polluted, or you have allowed wastewater to surface. those three criteria. And the county and the city are saying, irrespective of any of these three, we have the right to look. We don't know if it's polluting or not, but there we go.
And that's my point, is that we can spend money down there, and the city and the county are still gonna have the regulations, so those people are gonna have to comply.
Right, but you will have
These three people that came here are gonna have to
judge rules
comply
no,
to
then
doing
they don't.
inspections.
Yeah,
If the
well,
judge
you will
rules no,
have a
then they don't.
decision on what this means.
I don't think you're right. I don't
But-
know why we're going there.
But I try to answer any questions for any of you if I can to clarify what the issue here is.
Is it too late for discussion on the issue? I mean, like, if I wanted to say, I agree with the ordinances. I think they follow along with the mission of this board. They were put in place to protect our water resources. And I have one story to share. A friend of mine lives in Carriage Hills, has a newer home. Shortly after the ordinance went into effect, she did what she thought she had to do. They had an inspector come. It's a new system. Well, when they opened things up and looked, the pipe coming into her septic tank had come unattached. And so some of their wastewater was going into the tank, some of it was going into the ground. And she told me, she said, my goodness, we would have never known because nothing was surfacing. You know, it's fractured rock. It was going below. And so from that one example, I thought, no, this is a good ordinance to have. And the grandfathered systems, realistically, they're the ones that can cause more problems because who knows what was put in 1950. In my experience, we found car bodies, that was their septic tank. Or just a pipe in the ground, as long as it moved away from the house, it did its job.
I would like to clarify one thing. Ms. Noyes used the term inspection. What the county and the city are doing is not inspection. It's an observation. And the observation is by one of the outfits that do pumping, not by any licensed inspector. So, in some respects, that doesn't really address the question. You know, if there was an inspection, then we would have a different circumstance. Does that help you?
Well, I think an observation can also discover problems as well.
I understand that, but as some people argue, it's in their best interest to find a problem because it generates more money for them. So, do they have a conflict? That's the question. You know, whereas if you had a licensed inspector, an independent third party, you wouldn't have that argument being raised. Any other?
Okay.
Thank you.
I have an answer to call the question. It's a motion, takes a second. It requires a 2/3 vote to stop debate.
Oh, okay. Remember that for next time. Any other discussion? We're ready to vote on this? All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
No opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Roll call.
Koth,
No.
Cherokee,
No.
Driscoll,
No.
Jovic,
Yes.
Rollinger,
No.
Williams,
Yes.
Mack,
Nope.
Ialana,
Yes.
Harris.
No.
Motion fails. 6-3.
Well, I think we still probably need to have a motion then to, as it states in here, to withdraw.
I'd like to call a point of order that there's enough people on this board, even yourself, Mr. Chair. I mean, you worked with the city you have a good knowledge of the personnel that work in the city and the city attorney, that you might have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I haven't worked for the city for 15 years.
But you still know all the individuals down there. We went down there the other day. You needed no introduction.
I've lived in
That
Rapid City my whole life.
Public Works did not want to take on the role of doing inspections for this very reason.
Well, I disagree.
Then they would be doing the inspections instead of, at first they requested a specific.
Some sort of monetary value or something, Jim, that's not a conflict of interest. I mean, that's not even close to being a conflict of interest.
Well, what it was is they first tried to assign a contractor to do all the inspections for Pennington County on a no bid. So you would call and they would tell you whatever price they saw fit, because you couldn't do anything out without their say-so, until there's enough complaints to say, wait a second, all this guy did was pump my septic system. And they opened it up to all pumpers.
What is his contract, conflict of interest though? That's a totally separate subject we just went on there. What's his conflict of interest? What's his monetary gain?
Because right now, the city and certain elected officials got money from the pumpers to keep this on the books.
What does that have to do with me?
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
You're really
you're making an accusation. I have a conflict of interest, and I disagree.
Well, I know that you're still very close tied with the city.
Let's move on. I would like to have somebody make a motion to
Take a break.
withdraw the petition for declaratory ruling as is stated on the agenda.
So move. I move that we move to withdraw the request for the declaratory ruling. You seem to think we need to take,
I
if
do.
we're not going to continue, we need to take the converse action.
I believe so. Is there a second?
I so move.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, moved by Dan, seconded by Steve. Discussion on the motion.
Call the question. Discussed.
Okay, the question's been called.
With a 2/3 vote.
Two-thirds
Requires
vote.
a second.
Requires a second.
I'll second.
Okay, question's been called, a second.
Let's go straight to a roll call.
Roll call on the question.
Hope,
Yes?
Bierke,
Aye.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Jovic,
Nay.
Rollinger,
Aye.
Williams,
No.
Mack,
Aye.
Bialana,
No.
Harris.
Aye.
Motion carries 2/3 vote.
Okay, thank you. So, all those in favor of the motion then, as stated, indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
We just
No.
roll called. Why would we do it again?
That was for the
That was for the question.
question.
Was
Call
that
question.
seconded? It was. Who, could I get who seconded?
Rollinger.
Steve did.
Yeah, the attorney has a question.
Yes.
Am I to assume, or are you directing me then to notify the state that you are abandoning your petition?
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be a cost involved.
Now, there will be a cost, but it won't be very major.
I talked to the DENR about who we had to send it to, and it's basically the list that I can give. What we need to do is we need to draft a letter signed by the chairman to these.
Excuse me, Chairman, did you just say you already spoke to DNR about canceling this before any official action by the board?
No, I talked to him about who was all involved with it, because
You just said you knew who to send the letter to
Yeah, I
before any official action by this board.
no, I asked him who was involved in this hearing.
And
so
on
he
what
gave me a list.
capacity did you make that call?
I'm a board member.
You were not chair, and you were not directed by the board to contact any state agency.
I'm a board member. And I'm interested in what's going on.
And there I leave my conflict of interest.
So anyway, I got a list for who we need to.
I understand, but since I'm the attorney of record, I will have to make that information to the board.
Okay.
Okay? But yeah, if you want to
I've got a
provide me
list.
with a copy of who you believe needs to be notified, I don't have any problem with that, because I would be notifying all the other people that have been notified of the hearing.
Yeah, it'd be those same people.
Yeah, I assume that
Yeah.
it's the same, yeah, okay. I will do that and have that, you'll have it at the next meeting,
Okay.
okay?
Mr. Chairman, do you realize last year around this time, you directed that no board member could go to a public county meeting and make any kind of statements based on our board status?
No.
It was the Pennington County Board of Commissioners. You said we could not go and make any formal statements as a board member.
I don't recall it.
As a board member of any board, you can't go there and represent the entire board on any issue. You can't go there and say, you can go talk, you can go talk to anybody you want, you can go talk, so can I. I can't state that I'm doing this as a representative of the board.
He already got word to cancel the letter too before it was voted on. I would say he pretty much acted as a board.
Absolutely not.
I would like to comment
Those
on
actions are
that.
fine.
Go ahead, man.
I would agree that it has the appearance of impropriety, and that's what we're supposed to avoid. So, I don't know where we should go from here, but I do believe that it has the appearance, and just by virtue of the appearance, there's a problem.
Any more comments? Let's move along. On the
No, there's
agenda.
a, from the audience.
I may have a comment if I may.
Okay, if you could come to the podium, please.
If I could keep track of my thought here, it's real simple. I might have lost it already, who knows? A, you're not a regulatory board. This issue you're talking about is a regulation or a stipulation or a covenant or some procedure has to be followed regarding septic systems. That's outside of your purview, period. You're here to function as a water board to promote water use and conservation. There, I've said that. I think I just forgot the rest of it. If
You
I come
forgot
up-
to announce your name also.
Oh, I'm Barry Muxon, DRA, Clean Water Alliance as well.
What was the name again?
Barry Muxon.
Barry.
I've lived in the hills for a number of years so far and love it out here. So I want to see it stay. I want to see clean water. I want to protect that water. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along.
We have to call the vote.
Oh, we haven't voted on it? We did vote on it.
We voted on
No,
that.
we
There was a
call
voice
the vote.
There was a voice vote.
Oh, okay.
He called
But-
the question. Just to call the question.
Yeah.
So,
So, okay, we're gonna vote on the motion to withdraw the request for the declaratory hearing. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
nay.
Roll call, please.
Hoth,
Yes.
Bierke,
Yes.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Jovic,
No.
Rollinger,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
Mack,
yes.
Bialotta,
No.
Harris.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-3.
Okay, thank you. Item 17, potential bylaws amendment to include language regarding disclosure of conflict of interest. I put this one on, we were talking about adding an item to each agenda relative to conflict of interest, and got some language that East Dakota Water Development District has in their bylaws that, to me, certainly is appropriate for us to address that issue in our bylaws. So I put it on here for discussion. Yes.
I have a point. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that the two members that we were waiting for showed up about an hour ago.
I did see that.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you know.
We'll try to fit him in here. Did everybody have a chance to look at that language to see if that would be appropriate to add to our bylaws?
Yeah, there's a new
Dave,
state.
you want to address that issue?
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
you okay. Jay Gelberson with East Dakota Water Development District, and Dan had called and asked what did we have in terms of conflict of interest language and so forth. And we've had language in our bylaws forever, as far as I can tell, my 25 years anyway, speaking about conflict of interest. We reviewed it a couple of years ago, and Director Bilotta alluded to there are some state requirements now. Not that we, as water development districts, we don't necessarily have to have conflict of interest statements in our bylaws. However, in our case, if we want to do business with the state of South Dakota, get a contract from DENR to do something, which we do quite frequently, they require that we have that.
Okay.
And so we reviewed ours, checked through it. This is the language we're currently using. It has been more than adequate to keep them happy. The agreements keep coming, so you know, it's something fair. I think you've all kind of gone around today and identified what are conflicts and what probably aren't, and so forth. But yeah, you know, if at some point down the line the district was interested in working with the state on some particular project that would involve you guys receiving funding from them, one of the requirements they're going to ask to see is proof of some conflict of interest statement. Now, as long as it just says conflict of interest statement, that's probably going to be good enough, but you would need to have something, so.
Well, I thought the language was well written. I think that would be appropriate for us too, to include in our bylaws, personally. But any other thoughts from the board members on that?
I've got a thought.
Okay.
We have to have a 30-day notice before we vote on it.
Yeah.
Are you thinking that this would be in lieu of a declaration at the beginning of our meetings?
Yes.
No, this is just to do business with other state agencies.
No, I think it covers everything.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that is, why would we want to do that? What's the problem with asking people to declare conflict of interest at the beginning of a meeting? Seems like that's a good business practice.
Probably nothing.
And I guess if somebody's opposed to that, I'm a little curious as to why.
Are you through?
Yep.
Dan?
I would offer that for expedience of time, there's no need to go around the table and identify conflict of interest in the case of things like the next item that comes up for, you know, USGS stream flow gauge funding. I would categorically exclude myself anytime there would be an agenda item where I would need to do so. So I think it could save us time, and that to have it as a standing agenda item is completely unnecessary.
Okay.
Well, you might say that, sir, but I already had a call from DNR where they told me Dan had this conversation with him, and I spoke out of turn and accused him of conflict of interest before he admitted to it. Which is my ignorance. That he went behind the board's back and acted as an official board member, told me he was part of the board and planning on killing this, and asked where. We had to sign the paperwork to send it to.
No, that's not
And you
true.
shake your head saying that's not a big deal, but you're just saying you agree to somebody violating their oath and violating the trust of a board.
That's not what happened.
I can tell you they called me.
Who's they?
I'm keeping my sources quiet.
Okay.
Maybe you should have.
I've got a comment.
Go ahead.
I think the act of asking this question up front, like I said, is a good business practice. None of us knows all of the business dealings of the other people on the board. You know, it sounds like the board that we have is made up of a rich tapestry of people from different backgrounds. And so all of us have had all kinds of history, probably a lot of it in this area. So I think from my perspective, it's simply a good business practice to ask right up front for everybody, each director to review the agenda and to declare right up front if you have any conflict of interest. And again, I would, sorry to, if you're opposed to that, I guess to me that raises a question. Why would you be opposed to it?
Steve?
Dan, I've served on over 30 boards. I've never had that conflict of interest you usually have in your bylaws. And it's up to each individual to determine whether that's a conflict. Now, somebody else could disagree, just like you and Jim are going at it right now, which doesn't even come close to being, I mean, you can, if I'm gonna go do something, I'm gonna bring it to the board, I can go ask and get all the information I want, and I can bring here and make my argument. You can go down there 10 times and done that, but what I'm saying is, and I don't have a problem with it either. If you guys wanna do that, I don't care. To me, it's a waste of time, but if Nathan is really set on having us do that, I think we should have both. I think it should be in our bylaws. We should have it in there so that it is, you know, on record that yes, we do have it, and if we still wanna go around at the meeting, I really don't have a problem with it.
I'd like to put one exclamation point on that. I think that's a great idea, have both. I also attend other board meetings on a regular basis, and this is part of their business, their regular business. And it forces the issue. It forces the board members to examine the agenda and to determine where those conflicts are right up front. And then it takes all the potential issues away, because you know right up front, like when we get to that section of the agenda, we will all know why Mr. Driscoll is going to abstain. I'm assuming he will.
The follow-up, Nathan, when you get to that point and you said, you know, I'm going to step back, at the time when that comes up, you have to state why, and usually you step off and sit down, but you tell us why. So if you got a conflict, you say that. When it comes up, you're usually not seated at the table where they're voting. You become an audience member, basically.
And again, great idea.
So, here we should leave that on the number 6 item on every agenda. Anybody opposed to that?
Well, we had already voted on it, being on the agenda, for
We
every
did?
agenda.
Well, yeah, but I mean, going forward. I'm talking about the next meeting.
It was permanently put on the agenda at the last meeting for all future agendas.
Okay. So, getting back to items 17, is there any action we want to take on that to make that part of our bylaws?
It's gonna require a 30-day notice. Can we consider this the 30-day notice of intent to do so?
I would
And
say
it's
so.
gotta get published, so at least on the website or in the minutes.
I don't know that it doesn't, this wouldn't count. I could send out an email just to be safe,
Okay.
stating this. I would guess this would be sufficient notice if you want to do it that way.
Okay.
Just we'll follow it with the email as suggested.
Is there a motion? I
So
think
just-
we need to vote on this. I think, make a
No,
motion.
we can't vote on it.
I mean,
Can we vote on actually
Yeah,
putting it on?
yeah, I think we
publishing
should
it,
vote that
and
we're
then
going
it's
to
on
do that.
30 days starts today.
Yes.
And there's no questions, it's in the record, and it can be posted on the
That'll be
website.
the next meeting.
February 12th.
So, yeah.
So it'd be within the 30 days and then 2/3 vote, and then it's on and
Yep.
done. Mr. Chairman, I move to start the 30-day notice for adding the disclosure of conflict of interest onto the bylaws
As shown on
as shown
on the agenda.
on the agenda.
Okay. And who seconded? Steve, okay? Any discussion, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Okay, let's handle, we'll handle item 18 and then we'll break. Cost sharing funding for the USGS stream gauges for Castle Creek above Deerfield Lake and Road Fork of Rapid Creek near Roxford. These are the ones that we did not fund last year, and I would like to have some input from the new board members and the existing members. I would like personally to see us continue funding this. These
I will
stream
move to
gauges.
the audience seating,
Okay.
thank you.
I did talk to Joyce and got this proposed agreement from Joyce. One thing she did say on the Castle Creek stream gauge, the Bureau of Reclamation has agreed to pay for about a fourth of the cost of that, so our costs are gonna be a little bit less for that one. And,
Isn't Pennington County currently paying for these?
what's that?
Isn't Pennington County currently paying for both
Well,
of these?
Pennington, and then the one at Rose Fork, they actually took the equipment out. And say, Dan, I do have a question for you. Now, Joyce told me that the equipment was taken out of the one at Rhodes Fork. Is that correct? And would have to be put back in?
That is correct.
Yeah, so.
Was it taken out for winter reasons or because the county ceased funding them?
Well, it was because it was changed from a full-time gauge to a miscellaneous measurement site, which requires no operating equipment. It just requires somebody to visit the site.
But you do have the equipment at your.
Well, there's equipment
disposal.
available, but
Yeah,
it needs to be reinstalled.
that's what she told us.
I don't think there's, what I'd looked at it, I don't really see what you would typically think of as an installation cost.
Yeah, okay.
I've got a question. Are we putting a cart before the horse here? I mean, do we have a funding request from USGS? I mean, what's driving this?
Especially when you already made all the phone calls, like I said, you said you didn't do. And any other conflicts of interest
I
you're
went down
having.
there and put this on the agenda, just like anybody else put something on the
Right, but you
agenda.
already made the phone calls.
Phone calls to who?
USGS.
I went down and talked to Joyce.
In the county.
I went down and talked to Joyce.
In the county.
I didn't talk to the county.
Yeah, you did. Because I know you.
Anyway, you can argue against yourself. I want to move forward on this item and have it put up to a vote for the board again to start funding those two
There
stream
is
gauges
no
again.
funding request before the board at this time.
It's in the packet.
You took a funding request yourself?
No, it's from the USGS. We have an agreement. It's in the packet.
When did that go out? Did we also determine from state law that it's the state water board's duty to fund the stream gauges?
We have historically
By
for
state
30,
law?
30-something. I didn't say anything about state law. Is it?
Yeah, it's state law that the South Dakota Water Management Board, not the
Before we
West
discuss
Dakota
it,
Water Development
let's
District,
see if
has the
there's a
duty to
motion
fund
on
the stream gauges.
the floor. Basically, what I was asking the USGS to bring forward an agreement to fund those two stream gauges that the previous board had not funded.
Mr. Chair, I've got a follow-up question.
I guess my question is, does Pennington County have a timeline where they are funding it since West Dakota stopped their financial assistance?
They've been funding it
That's
since.
not guaranteed there. They
They've
did it because,
actively
they did it
funding it right
because,
now.
But did they say we're gonna do it for a year or 6 months or?
It's actively funded right now.
What I'm wondering is it funded through the county through a certain time?
it's not funded as a full-service stream gauge. They're not doing the same functions as they normally do as the rest of a lot of those other stream gauges that are funded by different organizations. So the data that they're getting out of those recorders aren't the same ones that were there before.
they had their hands up first.
Nathan?
Is there anybody from the USGS here to make the pitch?
Let me
for-
answer this.
So, Mike, so why are you making the pitch for USGS?
Well, Joyce, the USGS, with the federal government shutdown, they could not attend this meeting.
They were able to print up the letter on the 28th. They were shut down then.
They were informed, Joyce said sent me an email
I
saying they were not
have
gonna
one
be
other
here.
thing real fast too, which didn't make the newspapers either. We only voted this down because I called the state of Wyoming, who canceled hundreds of USGS water gauges. Not because they got rid of them, because they're doing it for a fraction of the cost. And we suggested having the School of Mines do this at that fraction of a cost versus USGS, and give the data to USGS, and they adamantly declined. Not the School of Mines, USGS.
These stream gauges are funded on a cooperative basis. In other words, they have to have a cooperator, and the West Dakota Water Development District has been a cooperator on 2 of these stream gauges. And there's the City of Rapid City, DENR has stream gauges, Bureau of Reclamation. I mean, there's the Corps of Engineers. There's a lot of different agencies that are cooperating on having stream gauges. Geez, there's a bug flying around, spread along Rapid Creek. So it mainly for water management purposes, people using the water resource out of the Rapid Creek Basin.
Again, I go back to Linda's question. You know, the county had stepped up. I don't know what percentage they're paying, and I think we have to have them here so we can ask some of these questions, because I have no idea what they've been paid, how long it goes for, what percentage. You said it's a lower amount. That's still money. So we need to have them standing here so that we can address those questions. If they're not here, I can't vote on anything.
Okay, let's just put it on the next agenda then, because she was
There has to
planning on
be a
being here, but the government
I
shut down, so
understand
they
that.
can't come.
I understand that. And they may be shut down then too.
Could be. But I would like to put this on the next agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address that
Yes.
government shutdown. I mean, because somebody's not getting paid, they can't come to the meeting
Were
here.
they being paid to come in?
Other than Mr. Tupper, is there anybody else here that's getting paid to come to the meeting tonight?
Don't you guys get paid?
In
Yeah.
the audience?
In the audience.
Mr. Driscoll,
You're
you wanna
getting paid to sit
speak?
here? Okay, good. Good deal for you.
If I may, since it doesn't relate to, I cannot advocate for or against funding these things, but the rules specifically prohibit anybody from performing government business, pay or no pay. That has nothing to do with it. With the shutdown, we are specifically, prohibited from doing government business. It's very unfortunate,
Well,
but
then how'd that letter get
those are
printed?
the hands that are tied.
How did the letter get printed on the 28th? The government was shut down at that time. That request went out on the 28th of December, is that correct?
No,
The contract.
Mr. Bierke had visited USGS office while it was still in operation. I
Yes,
was aware of
it
that.
was.
The contract went out on the 28th. Wouldn't that be in direct conflict with what you just described?
Looks like December
20th?
Yeah.
December 20th.
You scroll down to the
Yeah.
estimations, or the top letterhead, where was it? I thought it said 28th.
Well, I agree with Steve. I mean, this is not something we have to act on tonight, but I would like to act on it, consider that at the next meeting. So let's just move that to the next meeting.
Has to be voted on.
There has to be a motion.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion, we postpone this until the February meeting.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Ron seconded the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
No.
2 noes. If it's okay with the board, since our consultants got here on items, item number, let's see what item number was that?
11, 13,
13 and 14.
Well, it was voted on and moved.
It was moved to
Yep.
the next
It was
It
moved.
was voted on.
Yep, so,
So that agenda item's passed.
yep, it can't go.
Could you guys come, could you two come to the podium, please? We had, since you guys weren't here when this item came up, the board decided to move this to the next meeting. Would you be available to come back on the February the 12th to our next meeting?
Potentially, maybe, yeah. I believe so.
Okay. It's gonna be at the garage,
Okay.
since we're not gonna be meeting here the next meeting, so. If you could do that, we'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm, there's quite a few of the new members. I would you know, I really like if you could really be there, because I need the information, I need to ask questions,
Okay, sure.
Sorry.
Do that. Okay.
Thank you for
Thanks.
coming. We'll see you next meeting then. All right. Number 19, approved travel and expense for legislative event, Water District booth and pier on January 9th, which is Wednesday. Just a raise of hands of who would like to go, who would like to attend that meeting. I'm planning on going down just for the day on the 9th. And probably be down there just in time to attend a couple of meetings. The James Valley Water Development District and Eastern Dakota Water Development Districts have their meetings starting, I think you said at 10 o'clock was the first one on Wednesday, which is James Valley, and have lunch, and you get to meet a lot of new people that are in the same business as we are. And I did go last year and learned a lot. So would there be anyone interested in just going down and back in one day?
Question, I got a question.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a brand new member here, so I just wanted to ask the rest of the board if they've been there before, and if it would be worth, you know, me being brand new. So maybe it's better for those who've been here for a while.
I was pretty new when I went down there, and it was very informative on how other water development districts do business and how they perform their meetings and that sort of thing.
We'd kind of discussed it at the last meeting. It'd be great if 2 people could go, and we're kind of encouraging new people, so that way the same people don't go every time. Because when we're talking about money, you're talking about taxpayer money to go on a trip. You don't want to be the one guy that goes on all the trips. And so we kind of thought it better to be new people. I know Dan says he'd like to go again, but that'll be his personal choice.
Yes, Dan.
I'd like to go, and I have free lodging.
Perfect. No, we like that word.
Okay.
Is there more to it than just what you're going down there for, Dan? 'Cause I thought I'd seen something where there's things going on.
There is a full agenda.
Yeah, there's more than one day actually too, so we'll let Jay
Okay.
give you the details.
Jay Gilbertson again, for the record, or talk into that.
Yeah.
The first week of session, which as we're aware starts tomorrow, has historically also been the week or a period of time when the State Rural Water Association, South Dakota Association of Rural Water Systems, and you folks are members like we are, has held their annual technical conference. It goes on at the same time. It's convenient because it's kind of a slow time for the legislators, so if you want to talk to them, it's much easier to get in touch with them this week rather than, say, a month from now. But as such, yeah, there are several different things. The ATC gets started tomorrow, about 10 o'clock. I've got to be back here by 11 for a meeting I'm involved with. That'll run through about midday on Thursday. They have a variety of different meetings going on. The rural water meeting that would be probably of most interest to you folks, or opportunity, is just they have a legislative reception and kind of a trade show thing at the Dakota Wednesday afternoon and early evening, 4 to 8 o'clock. Legislators show up, all the major systems are there and represented, and it's a chance to kind of run in and meet those people. On Wednesday morning, bright and early, 7 o'clock, 7:15 is when we'll get started. We have a breakfast with the water development districts, where all of us that have those lovely little posters back there that we had made up a couple of years ago for everybody, we have those sitting in the speaker's lobby and the president's lobby on the 3rd floor of the Capitol, coffee and rolls, and a chance to, again, meet the legislators and talk about various activities we've got going on. As been alluded, 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the James River Water Development District will hold their board meeting down at the Legion Cabin. We break for lunch at noon. 1 o'clock is the East Dakota, my own board will meet out there. And then there's the legislative get-together with rural water after that. And then if you're really hardcore and you want to hang around till Thursday, they have a legislative forum where we've been really pretty lucky the last decade or so. We'll get pretty much all of the leadership of both the House and the Senate. Both parties, both chambers will all show up. And we got about an hour and 15 minutes where we get a chance to ask them questions or let them pontificate about what's going on. And then that wraps up with those sorts of things. So it's just a lot of, because of the rural water activities, which many of us were involved with, we started doing a few more things here and there, and then pretty soon my James River board and then my board said, well, hey, we're all out here in Pierre, why don't we just hold a meeting? And we did. And again, it's a convenient opportunity. We too, as has been alluded to with the federal shutdown, had been hoping to save the USGS folks traveling all the way across the state, have them come over on Wednesday and give us an update on some of the things that we're working with them on, like nitrate monitoring. But I suspect we're going to be a little short on that side as well. So it's a good opportunity to meet everybody. We usually have 6 of the 7 water development districts are somewhere in the complex at any one given time, so it's a chance to meet everybody. And certainly appreciated having West Dakota's representatives the last couple of years come out. James River, East Dakota, we take care of the morning deal. James River takes care of the lunch, and so everything else just an opportunity to, if you can make it out, great. As has been said, you get a chance to meet some of the other directors, see how some of the other districts work. Not to say, you know, we do it better. It's just different. It works for us, and that sort of thing. So it's a good opportunity to visit with folks.
Thank you.
I wouldn't mind going, but I'd like to know from this board would it be more prudent for me to go maybe down Wednesday, come back on Thursday. I don't want to waste a lot of taxpayer. I want to make sure that you're getting something from this. That's why I'm looking at the prior board members to see what you guys think as far as what would be prudent for me to do.
I think you should go.
And what I was saying is going Thursday.
The mileage is some of the biggest expense, that and the hotel, so.
So going there Wednesday, coming back on Thursday, would that be something you think would be beneficial?
Jay's been to more of these than us. I have never been to one.
Okay.
Bring Jim.
I'd go to whoever wanted to go. I mean, I have no issues with that.
Dan?
If you send me, I was planning on driving down Tuesday, going through your stuff Wednesday, the meetings, and then coming back maybe Wednesday evening or maybe early Thursday morning. So I don't know if it would make sense to stagger things or not.
Well, you said they had that function Wednesday from 4 to 8, if I heard you right.
Yeah, that's they have a trade show legislative. They call it the legislative reception. It's another option. I think if you were there for that, chances are pretty good you're going to come across your legislators and a chance to visit with those folks. We get very good attendance at the legislative function. By the same token, if you're there Wednesday morning, which is where we're hoping Daniel will show up, too, we have kind of a captive audience. There's really not much else going on in the Capitol building Wednesday morning. If you did one, you wouldn't necessarily have to do the other. I will admit that by about 6:30 on Wednesday, I'm going to be a very tired puppy, and not really adding much to my agenda at that point.
So you think you want to go then, Steve?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going down there.
What's the procedure, Mr. Chairman? Just
Well, I can't remember if we voted on it last time or not. I don't remember.
Yeah.
We did?
Yes. We have to it's better to pre-approve expenses ahead of time. That way,
Okay.
we don't find out 9 board members went at the cost of
Whatever.
$3,600.
Well, I'm planning on driving down Wednesday, like I did last time, and going back Wednesday night. I'll be there pretty much the whole
So
day.
if I'm gonna go down there, I'd rather stay Wednesday night, come back Thursday,
Okay.
because, you know, you got that 4 to 8.
Yep.
I don't wanna be coming back at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. I'm of the same opinion. It'd be great if we could carpool and share a room. Get a double bed and cut, cut the taxpayers' money cost down, you know what I mean?
Well, it sounds like then,
I'm sorry.
No, all I wanted to say was, are you sure you can get a room?
good question.
I mean,
Yeah, that is a very good question.
Yeah, with the
This
legislative
late,
session, and it's pretty hard right now,
everybody's
too.
there,
Yeah,
so it's gonna be kinda,
Kind of late notice, isn't it?
yeah.
you won't get one at the conference site for sure.
Do you have friends down there?
Well, I would say we authorize Dan and Steve then to go to the legislative event, water
Well,
district
I
booth.
thought James had put his name in.
Yeah, I've never been.
Are you gonna go too?
I'm very interested in it.
Okay,
But Dan said he's got a place to stay, so.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't crash with him though.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's made that clear. I
If
asked.
we can find a motel, then him and I
Let's have a motion in to authorize James and Steve and Dan to go to this event.
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by, okay, Bob. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 20, annual financial report requirements. Director Williams.
Well, this one has some, connection to item 23.
Hold that. I have an appointment on the 9th I cannot miss. I cannot go. I'd love to, but I cannot.
Okay,
I just checked my calendar. That sucks.
I'll go.
Lucky dog. You can't?
I can go, but it would be during the day. I have the day off.
Day and
Yeah.
back.
Item we just closed.
You want to just go down with me?
That would kind of leave
Just
Steve in
change
a lurch, or are you okay going?
Yeah. I second it.
Do we want to redo that motion then?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem being by myself, it's not an issue.
Okay. Looks like we need to redo that motion. Can we just void it?
I think you need to recall it.
Yeah, recall the motion.
Okay, recall the motion. All in favor of recalling the motion, previous
Aye.
motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. So then we need a motion to authorize Steve, Tom, Dan to go. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and second to approve travel and expense for those 3 individuals. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And just a quick note on that too, I'll call tomorrow to see if I can get a room. If I can't, then I'll go, but I'll be coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Okay, item 20. Director Williams?
Well, I was trying to help our,
Oh,
you're getting way ahead of the story here is all.
okay.
Am I getting this right? Okay, I'm ready to go again.
Okay.
All right.
You have floor.
Items number 20 and 23 are extremely similar. The new treasurer will have to talk with Dan on the financial, annual financial report we give back to the state. And we also have to make sure that we have signatures changed from mine to his. And there has to be, we have to get together to go down to the bank to do that. And I think there's 2 other signatures, right? The secretary, and so that would be.
Treasurer and Dan.
And,
Yeah, it was just the secretary.
Yeah, secretary, treasurer, and Dan.
Okay. That's the way it was.
Okay.
And Director Dearloo was the other person, and I'm not sure how that works, because we had to have outgoing people show up at the same time at the bank to change the signatures over. That's all.
Because you got to give your financial information and all that happy stuff.
So can you coordinate that, Dan, then?
Yeah, I'll get with Director Rollinger and,
Our secretary.
okay.
Linda.
But the secretary is also on that
Yeah.
account?
Yep.
I am leaving town on the 12th and will be gone for 2 weeks.
Okay. And going to Pier, let's see.
Why don't you guys just get,
Friday? Friday's the 11th, is that right?
Yes.
yeah, that's correct.
Should we tentatively plan on Friday?
Sometime in the morning or afternoon.
Set it up.
It's not urgent. The two of us can still sign checks, so we
Right.
still got two
Yeah.
people, but we can try to set up a Friday.
Would it work better for you when
Basically,
you come back?
I try not to sign, any checks unless it requires two signatures, which is the case if it's over $2,500.
Well, if we got you two right now, it just makes it easier for when she gets back. I'm in no hurry.
Okay.
And I don't know if there needs to be, if we all have to go at the same time, but we might have to have Secretary, or Director Dearloo come in and
Oh.
verify that she's gonna be taken off.
Why don't you find out for us?
Yeah.
And then we can go from there about
Okay.
when we can make
Yeah.
this happen.
We'll let you guys work that out.
Yep.
then. Okay. So,
So I took care of 2.
you took care of 23 also?
That's right.
All right, check those off then. Chair's comments, I don't have any comments. There are items from directors. Bob, do you have any items?
I covered that, the signature issue. So I
That's
think we're
it?
good.
Ron, any items, comments?
No, not at this point. I'm looking forward to the folks from Mines next meeting to talk about their 2 projects.
Okay, good. Dan, anything?
None.
Linda?
No.
Steve? Tom?
Nope.
James?
Yes. I got 4 phone calls in total the last couple of weeks, 2 from federal agencies, 2 from local, regarding the actions of the new chairman. Where it was all outlined, even though there wasn't board approval for his actions. When, especially last year, we couldn't even go talk to the press, talk to another board without permission, that now our new chairman, who made those rules, is talking to multiple agencies, deciding things for an entire board before they've even been brought up on an agenda. I find that very disheartening.
Anything else?
Nope.
Nathan?
Yes. I wanted to talk basically for the benefit of, I guess, the new board members. I think it's kind of clear to me, based on how the votes went down today, that you guys probably came in with preconceived notions about things. I wanted to give you a little bit of background about why I look at things the way that I do. I was a federal officer for 21 years. I was a whistleblower. I was faced with the situation where I had government bureaucrats that were trying to involve me in corruption. I blew the whistle on them within 4 days of me doing that. I was removed from my position, given a career-ending performance evaluation, demoted and transferred. All things that are specifically prohibited by federal law, but they did it anyway. Now, the people that did it eventually went away, but it took years. And it took years for me to go through this extremely difficult process alone. So when I hear stories about the people that came in here asking for us to help them, I have a very strong sentiment toward them, because I was one of those little people that the government came in and tried to crush like a bug, like I was nothing. And so for me, this was personal. I looked at that as something that was an injustice. I've been through it. And, you know, with all due respect, Mr. Koth, it's hard. When it's just you against the machine, it's extremely difficult, and it takes a huge toll. In my case, my wife almost died. She was hospitalized. She's got a stress-induced disease that she'll be on medication for the rest of her life now because of that, because of what I had to go through, because of the government. All because I tried to do the right thing. So I think that's what these other people are trying to do. And it's hard. It's extremely hard, especially when you've got, as part of the machine, the media that is fostering this pro-government agenda. When it's the government, in my case, that was corrupt. Right down the line. So we all look at things as a function of the path that we've walked in our lives. And I'm hoping that you guys haven't had those experiences, but I'm guessing if you had, you'd look at things differently. So, and if you haven't, I'm glad for you. I'm not a radical. I'm just a guy who's had a lot of different experiences. And as a consequence, I look at things perhaps differently than some other people do, and I question things. And I've got a strong distrust of government, something that I think our founding fathers wanted our press to have. They wanted these people to question what was going on, and that's not happening now. So anyway, enough about that. Thank you. I'm glad that that you're on the board. I hope that that we can work together. So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along here. It's your, you have the floor now.
I get the state water plan booklets. I got a few of, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 of them, but it's kind of interesting to look through. They give out about $100 million in grants and loans on water issues, which makes me think there may be some money available for some of our needs. So just something to keep in mind there. Rapid City got some. Green Valley Sanitation District who came in and presented to us several months ago. I see they got a grant. Just comment to the new directors on my role here. When I took over the contract, I'm basically a part-time person, contractor. It's 20 hours a week. Some weeks take a little more, like the week with a meeting. So just to give you an idea of how my role is defined, there's some things in the bylaws and policies. However, it was generally, when I took over, I just went by precedent, and the way things were done before seemed to be working fairly well. So when I work with you, Director Rollinger, on the treasurer's type stuff, I'm basically just doing things the way they were. However, that doesn't mean things can't be done differently. And look forward to working with you, all of you. If you have any questions, give me a call.
And your office hours are what now?
Okay, my guaranteed office hours will be Mondays from 1 to 5 p.m. and Tuesday morning from 8 to noon.
Thursday?
I'm sorry, Thursday, and then I'll just be in generally when it fits in with my schedule, but a lot of the times I'm there in the morning on the other days.
Okay, thank you. Items from the public. Anybody from the public want to address the board? Mike?
I think these two professionals that this board's hired, be it Mr. Jasper, Mr. Mullally, are a bargain when it comes to state government spending. This guy, electrical engineer, knows more about water in 9 months than I would probably know in the 4 years I've served this board and the constituents. So, speaking of constituents, I'm married to a lady that represents District 30 as a state representative. She goes out of the bounds of District 30 when she gets a phone call. She still chases things down. Matter of fact, she put a press release out with some assistance on Saturday for District 27 for some maybe mishandling of an election. So there is no bound just because you're in Pennington County to help somebody. Last thing I'll say is I'm also part of a group that was successful on a class action lawsuit and we beat the IRS. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Anyone else from the public? For the good of the order. All right, I guess we're ready to adjourn if we could have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Take a pick. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I have things for all of you.
Get your checks.
Yeah. Mr. Rowling, they're going to get you this for
I think I'm going to
Oh, no.
Yeah,
We need to bring you in on that. Okay.
The mileage doesn't matter.
The only thing you can answer, thank you for coming.
Thank you, so I'm thinking about, I don't know when I'm thinking about going.
Thank you for, signing that. Thank you.
It's a possibility. What time do you think about leaving?
Well, I think we have to look at 5 in the morning.
Makes
Yeah, usually after 50 bucks, well, yeah.
You're rich in Vegas.
And then we left. We left about.
Sure, you'll find a good Christmas speed.
Hey. You have is that a roll?
This one, it's online too.
It's online?
We have acceptance. I think I'd go.
What's your ruling?
Well, technically, it's more or less just to know the amount of attendance in Easton.
I don't think there's a rule.
I don't think it's,
Just to see who's there.
yeah, just so we have.
I think it's helpful to know.
It is helpful. But if
We have a record of people that
if he refuses to do it, we're not going to be.
you don't have any rules, there's no rules.
Not that I know.
Because
It would
when
be
I
nice if you
came,
did.
when I came in March, there were people that didn't sign in.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that people are signing
But,
in.
you know,
So how do you know?
You always announce that.
Unless they
Gonna be really suppressed. Those are
You don't want to know who's in the meeting?
Well, it's kind of like this, because when I organized, we used to do like fundraisers, concerts and whatnot. We wanted everybody to sign so that we'd have a mailing list, contact us or reach out. Now, I can ask, even though I'm holding the event, I can ask, I can back you, but if you don't want to sign, if I force you not wanting to sign, you don't have to back your amount.
So you don't have anything in your bylaws?
No.
That we even have to have it signed?
I think it's just my own information. That can be nice and
Okay, well, that's interesting, I didn't know that.
No, no, no.
Then I won't sign in either, I don't need to sign in.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Nobody needs to.
Well, we know that you're coming, but we're not getting that.
I think the polite thing to do would be to sign in.